Blog Talk Radio.
He's not me. Yes, I am. I'm much taller. No, you're not. You're fatter, though. No, I'm not. We're the same. We're not the same at all. Yes, we are. No, we're not. Yes, we are.
I'm greater than, lesser than, and equal to the universe. Yeah, greater than it because that's contained in my mind, and lesser than it because that's obvious schmuck. And I'm equal to it because I'm of the same atoms it is. And I always say that what that does for me is connect me to everything and make me a part of it. I earnestly believe that it is all one spirit, all one energy, all one beat, and there are just these different manifestations of it. Because of that, I feel very comfortable and very at home because it is only me. And hey, it's only me. Remember that? Hey, it's okay. It's only me. Well, that's what the universe says to me. None of this shit can scare me because, hey, it's only me. No fucking problem.
So everything that exists is everything that exists. I am everything that exists. So are you. The more you realize that, the more you open up to the full infinity of who you are. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone. The good earth is rich. We can provide for everyone a way of life to be free and beautiful. We have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men, with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
That is the problem. That's the crisis. It's not political crisis, economic crisis, or the crisis of war. But the crisis is in ourselves.
The way out of this is the ultimate revolution. It's to be who we are and not what someone else tells us we should be. Christ, Buddhas, Krishnas, Muhammad, Wabokas, you are all the same as them. Every single one of them said that to all of you. He did not mean follow him in a religious context. He meant be the way I am. So you listen to me. Because you are. Listen to me. That way. Go to yourself. Because that's the only place you're ever going to find any real truth. Like you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. You do whatever the tube tells you. You dress like a tube, you eat like a tube, you raise your children like a tube. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion.
We have created this society. So we are responsible for that society. But is it possible not to change society, but is it possible to radically, deeply transform our condition, our consciousness, which is what we are? Is it possible?
All right, Freedomizers, NickieNix here with you as we rise above dehumanization here on this beautiful Friday the 13th. What a day. So, hey, I'm going to go ahead and get this straight up and going. Let me bring in Raven. Raven, hi, can you hear me now?
Good afternoon, sweet Nicole. How are you today?
I am having a beautiful, awesome day. It's about 73 outside and sunny and slightly windy, and man, you can't ask for a more gorgeous day.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm hoping everybody's enjoying this day because I stayed up all night making it. I'm exhausted, but you guys are worth it.
Well said. Well, your last name, Gregoire? I don't want to say it wrong.
The last name is Gregoire, yes. Jean-Pierre Royal Joseph Gregoire. You can call me Raven for short.
Yeah, Raven's better. My French isn't as good. I can understand it better than I can speak it, but hey, we all try, I think. I'm actually here in Texas. I know I don't sound like it.
I have to say, Nicole, I'm having a hard time understanding you. It's kind of fuzzy, but I'll do my best.
That is odd. Hey, anybody in the chat room that's listening as well, if you're having any issues as well, let me know so we can try to figure out what's going on. But I gotta let my cat out. What fun. There's always things that go on. Did you hear the beginning of the show at all? Or?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I could hear parts of it, yes.
Okay. Because from my end, it looks everybody can hear me just fine. So maybe it's your headset. Not a good thing.
Hang on. I'm going to take the headset off and just put the thing in my ear and see if that makes any difference. Hang on. Hello?
Hello.
So,
Does
keep talking.
that help? Yeah, okay. I can keep talking.
Actually, the headset is better. Hang on.
Okay. Oh. All right. Well, if that happens.
Okay, well, just go with the headset.
Yeah, it's all good. We can try what we can. I'll talk up as much as possible, and we can. If you have any major issues, just let me know, and I can try the phone and see if that works.
I'm sure it'll work out fine.
Okay. Well, getting started, of course, you're an author and a researcher and thinker and all-around good guy, I guess, Raven.
Well, that's a matter of opinion. I guess it depends who you talk to. I'm like everybody else. I'm down here on planet Earth, trying to do our best to be a channel for God's love. And whenever I make contact with someone such as yourself through Facebook or on the Internet, it's always a good sign that like-minded and like-hearted people can work together to support each other and try and spread love. I think that's what it's all about.
And for those in the chat room, I just added the link to your website that's under your pen name. Which is that, where did that come from?
Well, actually, you mean the name that I write under?
Yes.
Okay, well, first of all, anybody can go to my website if they just go to lovestruehome.com. The name Sri Gone Too Far, the first part, Sri, is just another way of spelling Sir, S-I-R. And in India, it's a title usually given to a title of respect or to a holy man. But, of course, I use it in a lighthearted way. I'm definitely not a holy man. And the other part, gone too far, and it's gone too far. So it means a holy man that's gone too far, because in my spiritual sort of expressions and inspirational passages and prose and poetry, the way that I was built and the way that I arrived on this planet is I tend to have sort of a lighthearted, comical approach to how I deal with my problems or interact with other people. So Sri Gone Too Far means exactly that. A bit of a crazy, unholy, holy man who likes to be whimsical and look for the best in everybody and always have a little comical view towards everything that I do and perceive.
Which is a good thing to do. We all need to have a little lighthearted view. Laughter is the language of the soul, I guess they say, correct? So we tend to take things a little bit too seriously, and a little lighthearted, even just outright laughter it can really help an individual clear a lot of cobwebs and bad feelings and just about everything. It's laughter's awesome. So that's I think why I liked it. Some of your comments definitely in your book alone, like Love's True Home. Some of your individual comments, just little jabs, were quite hilarious. I like the one about like the father. My father taught me about peace, love, and peace and love, and even if he was going to beat it into me.
That quote says that, when I was a young boy, and of course this is not true, I just used that as a way to express the lightheartedness and just ridiculousness of being a human being. But you know how some people, or many people in today's world, try to get other people to come around to their way of thinking, and it doesn't matter how noble our intentions are. The only way that anybody can change is through their own their own conscious decision. Change comes from within. And what's going on in our world today, everybody's trying to change everybody else to think their way or to do this or to do that, but it doesn't work that way. Really, individuals change on their own through conscious effort.
Exactly. Usually looking to the self to realize what works for you, because what works for you won't work for the next person.
That's true.
But that's how we learn. We need to learn. We need to not, instead of seeing the differences and always saying, hey, you belong to a different religion or you look different than me, whatever, if you actually learn from your neighbor, then you yourself can grow and maybe learn something a little bit more about yourself as well.
Yeah, that's right. We've been trained from of course, this gets into personal beliefs and ideas towards spirituality and religion, philosophy, theosophy, all these things. I subscribe to this idea, and of course this is my opinion only, and it's based on my experience. I don't declare it to be dogma or fact, but what I have learned is that I have been around many, many, many times. I've had who knows how many hundreds of thousands of lifetimes, and I believe that when we're born into each life, we bring with us the accumulation of all our past experiences, and we have our own thoughts and feelings, and we take in everything that people give to us, be it through education or through religion or from our peers or from books and movies and government. It just goes on, and we take in all this information, all these thoughts that come from other entities, and we process them and formulate them, and then we express them and thinking that they're our own, but it just isn't so. We are really, as individuals, we just forget our true nature, and we're always looking out into the world and reacting to it rather than looking within first and beholding our true spiritual nature. And it's a process of remembering who we are and gradually over time tuning into ourselves, and then we start to realize that everybody else is an individual spiritual being, and that we're here to share, not to preach, not to teach, but to learn from each other.
That was very, very well stated. I have a little clip I wanted to play. It goes along with exactly what you were saying. And then at that point, there was the very beginning of your book. In your introduction, I wanted to read that very top statement once after we read that, because I absolutely love that beginning that you had for the book. So if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
All right, perfect. Then I'm going to play this quick little clip. It's we are all one is what it is. We're all one consciousness. So we'll be, let's see, where did it go? Oh, I just lost it. All right, we'll be right back. Hold on.
The whole system that we live in drills into us that we're powerless, that we're weak, that our society is evil, that it's private, et cetera, and so forth. It's all a big, fat lie. We are powerful, beautiful, extraordinary. There is no reason why we cannot understand who we truly are, where we are going. There is no reason why the average individual cannot be fully empowered. We are incredibly powerful beings.
I think I spent 30 years of my life, the first 30, trying to become something. I wanted to become good at things. I wanted to become good at tennis. I wanted to become good at school and grades and everything I kind of viewed in that perspective. I'm not okay the way I am, but if I got good at things, I realized that I had the game wrong. The game was to find out what I already was.
Now, in our culture, we've been trained for individual differences to stand out. So you look at each person, the immediate hit is brighter, dumber, older, younger, richer, poorer, and we make all these dimensional distinctions, put them in categories and treat them that way. And we get so that we only see others as separate from ourselves in the ways in which they're separate. And one of the dramatic characteristics of experience is being with another person and suddenly seeing the ways in which they are like you, not different from you. and experiencing the fact that which is essence in you and which is essence in me is indeed one. The understanding that there is no other. It is all one. And I wasn't born Richard Albert. I was just born as a human being. And then I learned this whole business of who I am and whether I'm good or bad or achieving or not. All that's learned along the way.
The old appeals to racial, sexual, and religious chauvinism, to rabid nationalist fervor, are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed.
We're back here with you, and Raven, you still there?
Hello.
Hello. So what did you think of that?
Well, as I was listening to that, many things are going through my mind and stirring in my heart. And one of them is, I have this way that I kind of sum up everything about how I view life, and that is that I didn't realize who I was until I stopped being who I wasn't. And I'm trying to find a sort of a way to sort of visually or using some imagery to explain this, because we tend to look at ourselves and other people as being human beings first. If anybody out there that's listening has ever had the experience of being out of their body, and I've had it many times, and this is the very first time that it happened to me. I left my body while I was sleeping, and then I woke up, and my awareness was in the corner of the bedroom, and I was staring down at my body, and it was sleeping, and I realized for the first time that my true self, or at least at that particular moment in time, my perspective was outside of my body. So I realized that I was more than my body, and at that moment I realized that when I died, or when my body died, I would continue to exist, which gave me a real insight into my spiritual nature. So when we're trapped in the body, we're not trapped, when we're looking at the world from inside our body and using our physical senses, our sight and our smell and our taste and our touch and our feelings, our emotional part, the astral part of our body, when we're looking at the world from the physical body and our lower senses, we tend to view ourselves as being separate from everything else. And we tend to get drawn out into the outer world, and we forget our spiritual nature. As soul, which is what I consider myself to be, an eternal spiritual being, when I look at life, although I do see how we're all connected in a very special way, and we're all individual atoms of God's divine love, at the same time, it's been said by many teachings that eventually we become one with God. Well, I don't subscribe to that. I believe that there is no end to spiritual evolution. We don't reach a point where we finally say, aha, finally I've made it. There's always another step in our growth. God is looking for conscious beacons all the time to share its love light, to work through, to enable God's love to pass out into life. God needs channels. And as we become more spiritually developed, we become more individualized, and we become brighter beacons of God's love. And in one sense, as more beacons light up, as more souls become conscious channels for God's divine love, the brighter life becomes. And that's how I look at it. I believe that we are one, but also we are incredibly unique. And the way that Spirit works is like this. As I was saying before, we are an accumulation of all our experiences and all our previous lives. And as Spirit passes through us, as we open up our hearts to God's love and we share it, as it passes through us, it takes on our particular qualities, our unique characteristics, our likes and dislikes, and it becomes flavored, and it becomes colored with our unique essence. And when it reaches out and touches other people, it expresses itself through us. So in that sense, God can't really do without us, and we can't do without God. It's this incredible sort of relationship that we all have, but it's very hard for most of us to be aware of it because we tend to look at ourselves as being bodies first. You know, we worry about death. We worry about what other people think of us. We're concerned about the state of the planet. But really, these things should not be concerning us. If each individual was to become aware of their spiritual nature, then the world would change. Not because people are trying to change it, but because individuals are individually evolving, and that becomes reflected in the outer world. So as we change, the way that the world appears to us changes, but also the way that it is changes on its own, but not from effort. It comes from conscious evolution.
Exactly, and then we tend to think things on extremely linear terms. Everything has to have a beginning and end because that's where our experiences is normally limited to.
Yeah, and everything is, you know, life has become such a serious affair and so frantic and frenetic, and, you know, everybody's got these goals and aspirations. But really, you know, if you pull away, just imagine that you and I were sitting in a spaceship, we're from another planet, and we just drove by and had a quick look at the planet. We'd say, oh my gosh, what's with these individuals? They're harvesting everything in sight. They're remanufacturing it, packaging it, and selling it back to themselves. Now, that's pretty crazy when you look at it. So as a collective consciousness, I don't believe that the planet is evolving. As a matter of fact, I think it's de-evolving. But as individuals within part of the collective consciousness, we can evolve as spiritual beings. I look at the planet and the physical universe as being a kindergarten class for training. And the only way that we can graduate is to obey the laws, not man-made laws. I'm talking about spiritual laws. I'm not talking about psychic laws. You know, there's a lot of everybody's tapping into the psychic laws. You know, how to attract love into your life, how to manifest this and how to manifest that. And you see all these books on the secret of success or the secret of good relationships. Well, there are no secrets. Basically, there is only one law, and that is we all exist because of God's love. And since love has only one goal, and that is to give life, to sustain life, and to make, and to basically just to keep us healthy and fulfilled, all we have to do is obey that one law. But it's very difficult because everybody's teaching all these other laws or professing to know the truth. And it's our nature to look outside of ourselves, as I've said many times, for the truth. But really, you know, the best that any master or spiritual teacher or guide can do is just teach us to look within, and then the answers come out on their own.
Well, hey, we got a caller. You up for a call? 512 area code. You're with Raven and NickieNix.
Well, thank you. This is Dr. Joe calling in.
Hello, Dr. Joe.
Hi. Well, I was going to ask several questions, but Raven kind of covered them all concerning the separation of soul and God and what have you, and I kind of struggle with that whole thing. I mean, in the sense of, if you please correct me, but are you characterizing that quote unquote God is a separate entity that is outside of the gestalt of everything?
Well, you know, this idea of God, I mean, you know what's happened in our society and what's happened, generally speaking, throughout modern history, without going into way past Atlantis and into other planetary kind of consciousness. What people tend to take God and try and reduce it to a human concept. You know, no, I don't think anybody knows what God really is, because whatever we think God has got to be much more than that, because God cannot be encapsulated, God cannot be contained. But the only thing that I've learned that I know for sure is that God is love, and even that is kind of a nebulous, in a way, kind of expression. But God is love, and we exist because of God's love. I don't know how else to say it, because in a lot of ways it's impossible to really say what God is, but we can have a sense and an experience of some of God's love. I don't know how else to say it. It's just...
Yeah, no. I'm just separate. I'm trying to get clarification, because my perception is very different than that, and you know, I no longer subscribe to the idea of the individuated soul that is reincarnating and coming back and developing as an individual in that regard. It's almost like, if you have a pot of boiling water and a bubble comes to the surface of that water, when that bubble pops and the water molecules fold back into water, does that same bubble ever come back? And I don't think it does. And the pieces therein do. I could go into a whole other kind of model, if you will. But, each one of these models that we create and each one of these words that we use to try and represent all of this is simply just that. It's like we can talk about God and we can talk about spirit, and it's like describing a restaurant, and you tell someone about what's on the menu and the flavors and all this other kind of stuff, and they think about it, as opposed to going to the restaurant and trying the foods themselves. And so much of what you're saying is like, realizing the, the withinness of that connectivity, and going in there and tasting those foods and what have you. And for myself, it's really important to make a distinction, a very clear distinction, which then that piece that you just played from Zeitgeist, which, I love that piece, kind of clearly states in that, Ramdas talks about when we're born, we go into somebody training. And he became Richard Alpert, but he wasn't born Richard Alpert. And so for myself, that helps me to make the distinction between what I am and who I am. And any description goes into the what category, and that exists within the brain, and that creates the separation. And the who, any of the who we are, goes into the description, which only exists in the mind. And that the what we are, as you were saying, soul, for me, the only thing that really makes me, so if we're that energetic that's coming through and inside this receptor, it's almost like a microphone. You have a microphone, and unless there's electricity in it, you might as well use it as a hammer because it does nothing. Well, that electricity, what is that essence? And for me, it's like you were saying, the soul, and for me, that stands for SOUL, the spirit of unconditional love. And so, and so if we allow ourselves to focus or surrender to what we are, as opposed to all these who's and all these descriptions and all these fingers pointing at the moon. It's like, no, my finger's more correct. My finger's more correct. My finger's more correct. We get lost in all those descriptions.
Yes, and so very well stated, Dr. Joe. Yeah, that's a very good way of explaining it. I look at it that way in myself, because what happens is this, is that we're always using the mind, of course. We're using the mind to study the mind and to categorize things, like you were saying, to point at this, and to point at that. But there's actually a state of consciousness that goes beyond the mind. The mind is nothing more, even though it's glorified in our society, everybody just worships the mind, and the intellect is running the planet. It's just obvious, great minds, and people tend to confuse, they tend to confuse intellect with intelligence. Well, they're a million miles apart. Intellect is nothing but a sharp mind, and as you know, a sharp mind can be used by a greedy or a selfish person or a very benevolent, loving person. But intelligence is just having the mind in tune. It's having the heart and working in a loving fashion, and consciously being a channel for God's love. But we can actually reach a state where we go beyond thought. Thought is nothing more than reflection. Every time we have a thought, we might think that it's our own, but really thought is nothing more than reflection. Anything that we can possibly imagine, including everything we're talking about now in our conversation, already exists. Thought is where we, by putting our attention, our awareness on a pre-existing state of consciousness or an image, just steeped with emotion, we bring it to life, and we call it, that's what thinking is. But in fact, we can go beyond thought and perceive everything directly. And at that point, at that level of awareness, there is no separation. We do realize how we are all connected and all one in that sense. So that's the that is the challenge of being a human being.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, for myself, the whole concept, I'm coming from a place of having died 5 times, 3 of which I call near-death experiences, 2 of which I was on for 10 minutes, and the last one's 12 hours, knocking on the morgue door, letting me out, kind of thing. Literally 12 hours outside of this experience. And so, and I rarely talk about that. There's only one video of me talking about that because I don't want to be Mr. Death and run on the death platform, that whole kind of thing. But as a result of that experience, I came to have an awareness that the concept of the individuated soul that even the separation in the mind, it's like, we watch the evolution of consciousness. It seems as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to reflect with somebody who can talk on this level, I'm sorry, can you still hear me? Because I hear some noises in the background.
I hear the sounds of joyful children somewhere in the ether.
Okay, great. I couldn't tell what it was. Anyways,
sorry about that, guys. Like, I had to, my son just came home. He was out playing with the neighbors, and so that was...
no problem. No problem. Anyway, so in the evolution of consciousness, when we were Cro-Magnon man and what have you, and we were very, ecocentric as opposed to anthropocentric, and we were the ecology. We were every cell of our body. There was no separation. It was just you were in this flow of life that was happening. And then slowly, through consciousness, we separated mind and spirit, that we were outside of the mind. We started getting that concept that there is a kind of separation in that duality, and that duality was required. So then we went from the, God's out here, and now here we are, these separate souls, and that when we die, we go to this, playground in the heaven, in heaven where everything's all beautiful, and that wasn't really working out. So then we created the whole rebirth, kind of reincarnation thing so that then we could explain the continuous evolution of the consciousness and the energetic and what have you. And I believe that each one of those were just simply models to create a greater separation of that spirit and mind, so that then essentially those will actually collapse into the oneness, because we are now going beyond that point. Right now, I am talking...
Do me a favor, we have to take a quick break. This is a great conversation. So I've got to play the ads for our network and get our
let's continue on that point, Dr. Joy, because I'm really enjoying what you're saying. So we'll take this little break and we'll get back into it.
Excellent. Okay, I'll stay online. Yeah.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be right back. And, of course, we're with Raven, author of Love's True Home, and we've got Dr. Joe here with us talking, and this is NickieNix, and we're trying to rise above dehumanization here on Freedomizer Radio. Hang in there.
In today's world, being prepared is on everyone's mind. You're being told every day to prepare yourself. Okay, being prepared is one thing, but how are you preparing? Is the food you're going to eat something that you'll really enjoy? Comfort food. Or is it just something you'll eat for the sake of eating? After all, who cares about taste? You do. And at Tomorrow's Harvest, it's all about variety, taste, and a larger portion for less money. At Tomorrow's Harvest, you'll find 85 varieties of prepackaged meals, or you can customize your own family's menu. You can choose what you want, and they'll put it together for you. You choose what you and your family will eat every day. You'll find entrees like lasagna, beef stroganoff, salmon, ground beef, steak, and chicken. And don't forget real milk, the kind of food that when you need comfort, it's there. And preparation is as easy as 6 months, same as cash. Prepare today with Tomorrow's Harvest in Bountiful or online at tomorrowsharvest.com. Tomorrow's Harvest, a better taste in being prepared.
Radio listeners, you all know that the reason for global cooling is global warming. Well, we here at Lake Havasu Snow Removal want to remind everyone that we can plow your driveway or street 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We are available in the Lake Havasu, Phoenix, and soon-to-be Tucson areas in the cold Arizona desert. So, if your driveway is backed up in the middle of April or in the frozen tundra season of August, please call 855-NO-AZ-SNOW today. Time of day, any time of night, Lake Havasu Snow Removal will clear your driveway in freezing cold tundra of Arizona. Thank you.
Federal Reserve, you've been living hell to me. You've been robbing me since 1913. You'll run the presses till the ink is dry. Long ago, I stopped asking why. Federal Reserve, I hate every inch of you. You robbed me and you cheated me through and through. Now I'm a poorer and more destitute man. Mr. Congressman, why can't you understand? Federal Reserve, what good do you think you do? Do you think we'll all be richer when you're through? Your dollars are no longer backed by gold, and your stone walls turn my blood a little cold. Federal Reserve, may you rot and burn in hell. May your walls fall and may I live to tell. May all the world reject your fake cash. You stole our wealth, but we can take it back. You stole our wealth, but we can take it back. You stole our wealth, but we can take it back.
All right, Freedomizers, NickieNix back here with you, and let me bring back Raven, of course. So thank you, Raven, for hanging with us, and Dr. Joe, of course. So this conversation's been great. It's kind of hard not to keep moving forward at this point.
Well, I guess I can, I guess I can pick it up. First of all, I just want to thank you, Raven, for holding space and Nikki for holding space and just, having this opportunity for us to just be radiating this out, regardless of how many people are listening or what have you. That conversation is being had by millions of people across the planet, and so we're just kind of another antenna for that going out, and really grateful to have the opportunity to share.
I get a kick out of, in my book I have a chapter called Science, that's entertainment, and a lot of people, I do a lot of posting on Facebook. I've got 6 Facebook accounts and a Twitter account and 3 blogs. I've got hundreds of thousands of people I'm interacting with, and every time I bring up the subject of science and I attack it, not because I'm against it, just because I think that it misleads us all the time. It's always a great topic for conversation because we hold to our hearts and to our minds so much of what science tells us. We rely on it for information, but basically, I think science is way off the mark in so many areas. As an example, many people believe that we descended from the apes. Well, luckily for the primates, there's no relation. Here's how I look at how things are constructed. The lower planes, the mental world, the emotional astral world, and the physical world are created to temper us, for us to gain experience. And every life form, from the very lowly rock, minerals, the microscopic life forms, amoebas and parameciums, and then you get into plants and birds, mammals, and humans. These life forms are actually created for us, for soul, to gain experience, and that soul is reborn into different life forms. It slowly but surely works its way up through these different forms, and these forms are provided for us to gain experience. And when we reach the human form, when we start to have the human form for the first time in our spiritual lives, we begin to have a consciousness of ourselves, and of course that's when things start to run amok, because if you pull the human beings off the planet, let's face it, with no man-made laws, everything is working perfectly. There's harmony, there's peace, there's balance, there's a clean environment, there's joy, and there's just an abundance of life. Once you throw the humans into the picture, things start to go a little crazy, because when we have self-consciousness, it's the human nature, because we have a human side and a spiritual side. It is the human nature to become so infatuated with itself that it forgets its spiritual nature and starts to become, well, let's face it, greedy. Let's think about, well, how can I make my life better for me instead of being a channel for God's love? And that's one example of how science has led us astray. This idea. Another one is the Big Bang Theory. People, we've been taught by science that if we pick everything apart and we look at the smallest pieces, or if we take our big telescopes and look into the farthest reaches of space, we're going to find the answers to the beginning of life. Well, that's ridiculous. You know, science tends to ignore the most basic things. As an example, look at the sun. You know, science looks at the sun and says, oh, it's a big ball of gas, it's full of hydrogen, and it sends out all this light. But in fact, spiritually speaking, let's think about it this way. Without the sun, all physical life as we know it would end. That is because physical light in all its colors, you know, if you take a light and pass it through a prism, you see all the different colors. Each one of these colors has specific light-giving qualities. So the sun is not a big ball of gas. It is a conduit for a higher form of energy. It's like a child, you know, science is like a child that looks at a wall plug in a house, and it thinks that if you stick a plug in there, you can turn on a light or turn on your computer. It doesn't look beyond it and realize that the source of this energy is from a higher place. So suns are actually conduits of God's divine love coming from a higher place. And rather than study the things intellectually and pick them apart and look for answers, we should realize that these things can't be explained. We cannot use limited, well, I'm trying to think of a better way to say it. Let's take the human eyeball. Now, with our human eyes, we can see 1/10 of 1% of the entire electromagnetic spectrum, which means that most of life goes unseen by our physical eyes, but yet it's there. We're missing all of it, but yet we use our eyes and our little machines to measure everything, and we claim to know all about life. Well, you can see that it's ridiculous. Life, the purpose of life, the actual essence of spirituality cannot be determined or studied with our lower instruments of perception. The only way to really begin to learn about the source of all life is to rise above it. And that comes basically through our own experience. As we evolve, we learn to leave our bodies, we learn to see with our higher senses. There's one, there's an exercise that I give in my last video that I conducted a little while ago, and that is I say to everybody, look, close your eyes, imagine this, pretend you are in this beautiful, pristine, exotic valley high in the mystic mountains, far off on an exotic planet. Close your eyes and look around you. You can see a beautiful eagle flying high above. You can look into the distance and you can see a grizzly bear lumbering along a beautiful babbling brook, and you're surrounded by wildflowers, and you're just overcome almost by just the incredible aroma of these beautiful flowers. You can feel the wind in your face, and the sun is shining high above. Maybe there's 3 suns up there. Now, when you think about that, who is looking at that? If your eyes are closed, how is it that we can imagine such a beautiful scene without actually using our physical eyes? And of course, we all see it differently. And this is just a little taste of who and what we truly are. We can experience life in with our higher senses just by doing this simple experiment. To me, this is proof that when we rely on outer forces with physical instruments to measure and explain life, we're missing the point. We're being misled. Basically, it's all hearsay. It's all second-hand. So,
Hey, Raven, we have another caller.
Oh, okay.
Let's
I didn't mean to be rambling there.
I know. But Dr. Joe, you're still here. Don't worry about that. Everybody's mic's still open. But I'd like to introduce you to Swami Shiva.
Namaste. I greet you all with great love and great respect. As do I. Namaste. I had to call in and be part of this. I mean, here we are, 4 different individualized consciousnesses, except for Doctor, he's he's associating with what is before that. So most people have a hard time associating with the individuation and the fact it's just an individuation and a limitation. But I just love the fact we can all discuss the exact same reality, the one, and say it with so many different words and different images that rise up in the individual. And yet, for those of us who have experienced sitting within as this unity, this singularity, it changes everything.
And that is what those who, call them what you will, the controllers, the New World Order folk, that sort of thing, they are totally invested in keeping us from knowing that. But you have folks like myself, like Nikki, like Raven, like the doctor, who have come to various points of knowledge that kind of intersect, but we all came to them different ways. To demonstrate that everyone can do it. All you have to do is try. Take more time from the world and put it within, and it will happen. We're designed that way, And it's, forgive me for, I don't mean to go off on a rant or or a preaching session, but I just, it's blissful to be one with explaining things in this way.
The only thing that little red flag goes up, and it's only because of languaging that the little flag goes up, because I'm very astute with my languaging nowadays, is the idea, when I think of the Bilderbergs and the Federal Reserve and just that whole thing, that we see as like this controlling force that's attempting to do something to ourselves, I can only relate to it as my own denial of those aspects of myself. In other words, the part of being human that is greed. I have greed, and I'm willing to own my greed. I don't necessarily want to exercise it, but I am a greedy being. And that's been cultivated within inside myself. But my point is that I really have to be careful for my own consciousness to always step outside of that us and them. And, and it has much to do with, like,
but you still have to function down here with the us and them.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And
because the objective of the whole experiment, the whole humanity thing, the objective is to come to the state where directly and consciously you are 100% source while 100% individual and performing both flawlessly. After that, the human part ends, and I don't know what comes next. It can't be described in language I know.
There's the third aspect to that, though, that I'm 100% source and that I'm 100%, in this third dimension, and yet then I will divide up this third dimension and say that this third dimension has an us and them, as opposed to, so that adds like this third layer of separation, if you will, because all I know is within myself is that when I harbor anger and I harbor resentment and I harbor these things towards these parts of myself here that I want to call the Bilderbergs and the Trilateral Commission or whatever, that when I hold that charge, I keep it in reality. I keep the separation. And very much like Gandhi, when he said, that he just stated, matter of fact, the British are going to leave. And so it's like all of this is going to dissolve. But the key element was when he said that, he says, the British are going to leave because it's obvious, the few thousand people can't control millions of people and blah, 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 blah. He says, but when they leave, they'll leave as friends. And that was the key element, to remove the charge, to to speak the obvious that, okay, we've gone way out of control and this is the mind gone amok and this is not sustainable and it's not going to happen. And at the same time, we cannot do it with the polarization that we create. The polarization doesn't exist. We hold that polarization of the us and the them, and we're the ones who are generating it, and so we're the ones who are sustaining it. And so it's always really, yes, I'm in this dimension, and I see the part of myself that is doing this to us, or the oneness, and at the same time, I'm going to respond to it with, you're going to leave, and when you leave, you'll just leave as friends because you just didn't know any better. I mean, you really were operating in such darkness that not darkness like evil darkness, but just so blind.
Okay, but why do we always have to go to the simple fact that things have to be dark or light? Why is it good or evil? And why can't things just be? I mean, what is this whole idea that...
Well, it's all part of the equilibration, in my opinion, of consciousness, which was before the break we were talking about, how, the separation, and had to occur. I mean, I work with a spectrum where, you have at the very bottom of the spectrum, you have the very gross vibrations of like war and peace, and you realize without war you couldn't have peace, without peace you couldn't have war, so we finally realized that they're perfectly equilibrated, and it's part of a kind of a balancing act that we're learning in consciousness. But when you really appreciate and really understand that you had to have both of them in order to understand them, then you have a collapse and you move up this kind of, next layer of perception, and then now you have hate and love, and then you realize without hate you couldn't have love, without love you couldn't have hate.
Oh, I don't know.
But my point is,
I'd like to add something here, and talking about, everything that we're doing right now, of course, it's unavoidable. We're using the mind to talk about the world, and it is a fact that in the lower world, nothing can exist without its opposite. We have males and females, hot and cold, up and down, night and day, all these things. Well, separate from the human state of consciousness are psychic laws. As I said before, you pull all the human beings off the planet, you'll see how things work. There are natural laws that make sure that things sort of are kept in check. And when we talk about balance, we're not talking about equilibrium. We're talking about balance is really sort of a fluctuation of energies all the time, so things can keep unfolding or moving in a certain direction. But there are laws that exist beyond the psychic laws, and these are the spiritual laws. And the spiritual laws have nothing to do with opposites. There is no light and dark. There is only light, as an example. There is no male or female. Soul is sexless. God is not a him or her, as many people refer to God as him. So trying to find ways to catapult us, or trying to find exercises that can actually transcend the laws of opposites is very difficult to do when you're using a dichotomous structure such as the mechanical mind. We're talking about those guys out there trying to do within, or how we will attach ourselves to other people with anger. Everything has got to do with this oppositeness, this tension, and these are the natural laws and the psychic laws. But we are able to hint at and to consider these higher states of consciousness by having the mind in check, by using it as a finely tuned machine to perceive and come to conclusions. But there are worlds, and I've been there, maybe only for very fleeting moments. There are states of consciousness where you're actually beyond thought, and you actually just perceive things directly as a spiritual beings. And just to have that insight, even for a brief moment, when you go back to your physical body and then you look at the world, you're able to still see it in all its dichotomy, but you're able to also accept it for what it is. This planet,
when you're limited by the physical brain,
on purpose. It's a training ground.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And just to really just extend that model that I was talking about, you have these gross layers of vibration. I mean, it's all just frequencies. Everything, even our perceptions. I mean, it's all sound. You know what I mean? I mean, the table is sound, the rock is sound. I mean, everything that we perceive is a vibration, and so then we separate it with this thing called the mind to categorize and organize it. But in these grosser vibrations, when we're talking about emotionality and feelings and impetus, like I use that war and peace, and then you collapse and you kind of move to the center pole, and then you move up and you have hate and war, and then you realize you have to have both. So the point is that you finally get to a point where you're where you were describing earlier, Raven, in the sense of you get to the center point where instead of being pulled way over in one direction, I'm for peace, or I'm for war, or I hate, or love, and blah, 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 you sit in that center part and you can see both of them simultaneously. And then what is it that's observing that? What is that center point that is observing that? Because then you're no longer dragged in those directions, and you realize that is all just a perceptual model in order to be able to stay in that balanced state and not be pulled in either one of those directions and polarize it and hold it to be true.
Yes, and we are trained that way. I've said this a million times. Most of us, and I talk about myself too, I don't separate myself. I'm like everybody else. I have 1,000 negative thoughts a day. But most of us are trained to pursue goals that have been dictated or decided by others. And just imagine everybody on planet Earth simultaneously, all at once in the moment, agreeing on one thing. It sounds absolutely impossible, but that's the only way we'd ever have world peace. And that's not going to happen, because even physically speaking, for every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction. You get one person going for this, the other person is against it. These are the laws of polarity. This is the law of opposites. This is how the planet has been designed, irrespective and separate from humanity. And once we are born into these lower worlds of dichotomy, of opposites, of struggle, of war and peace, we tend to get caught up in it and want to change it and make things right. But we're not here to make things right. We're here to learn how to work within these laws and graduate and move on to another classroom. The planet Earth is like kindergarten class, is the way that I look at it. We're here to learn these laws, to be a channel for love, and you know what? Then we graduate and go to another classroom where things are a little bit more challenging. We learn even more.
Hey, Swami, what do you got to say?
I'm just basking in the bliss. It's just so nice to be with people who can, even though, like I said, we'll express it differently because that's our function.
You know,
through the
here's
physical.
the incredible thing.
You know,
Mine always
we've
makes
been
things so complicated, but you know, a simple act of love, as an example, if we take the time to compliment someone in a sincere way, a real act of genuine love, we are stirring the love pudding in their heart. Life can be very simple. It's a matter of beholding, acknowledging our spiritual nature, and being kind and loving to other people. If everybody did that, there'd be no greed, there'd be no need to steal, there'd be no need to be conniving and deceitful, but the world is not like that. But as individuals, we can celebrate our spiritual self and share our energy by recognizing.
I'm characterizing that now. I'm characterizing that out. I've introduced a concept into my community, and I'm calling this new kind of evolutionary step that we're talking, or that we're kind of discussing here. I'm calling it the MAS movement, M-A-S. And what that is the Mutual Appreciation Society, whereby at first it was admiration, mutual admiration, where we admire each other. But when you admire someone, you kind of put them up, and then you got to be down, right? And so really it was appreciation, the Mutual Appreciation Society, in that we are evolving now into exactly what you were saying. We're the new currency, if you will, because obviously the fiat currency and all that way of exchange is just, it's transitioning, to say the least. And
yeah, it's fixing to crash and burn. There's no way.
You know, it's transitioning, and so
mathematically impossible. Period.
Yeah, so the new currency
Go
really,
down and help people on the other side. That's our. I mean, for me, but I mean, you guys do the same thing through the circles that you hang out in. You know, we each perform this function, and
well, so the new currency between human beings is that appreciation, is the upliftment. Because, I mean, you know, you buy a car and, quote, unquote, its value depreciates. In other words, but when you appreciate someone, you literally add value. So you appreciate that there appears to be an individuated soul in front of you. You appreciate that that particular soul has it never existed before in all of eternity. From the moment it all began to as far as it can go, there's never been another you. And so what is that you? And what gift does it have for the whole of consciousness? What does that cell do to the rest of the cells in the organic, matter here to either uplift and nurture our life or to take away from it? And so when we start appreciating what they can give, what it is here to do that is special, that is perfect just the way it is, that when we're living in that reality, then all we are doing is uplifting and nurturing all life on the planet.
I've always found it quite interesting how in today's world, and right now we're referring to today's world, but these huge cycles have been going on for hundreds of thousands of years, contrary to what science may tell us. The legendary places like Atlantis and Lemuria, they existed, and long before that, in the same way that Columbus and all these explorers a few hundred years ago decided to sail across the Atlantic Ocean and look for new places, discover new lands. That same kind of activity has been going on the galactic scale, the planetary scale. It's been going on for long millions of years. And it always amazes me how people get up in the morning, they pray to their God to help them go kill their brothers. It is just to wage war. And that's what's happened. We have forgotten that life actually can be extremely basic and simple. We exist because of God's love. We are all God's children. Now, people truly were aware of that. Just imagine how life would be. We tend to intellectualize, separate, and attack and criticize and reduce things to these intellectual concepts, but really we are spiritual beings. We are all children of God, and God does not play favorites. It's pretty basic.
Yeah. Well, then, I mean, and this is just another model, but it's my true experience that, as I can only describe it as a model, And the whole linear concept that these things took place before now, and so that we have evolved to here, I no longer subscribe to that. It is all happening simultaneously, and just like a television station, all of a sudden when we find new channels, if you will, and that the evolutionary process is just one of realizing the other dimensions of perception, and that we have, quote unquote, evolved our perception or attuned to higher channels, but that all of that story of how we have evolved, all of that is just fodder for the mind. That it is all happening simultaneously. It all has been happening simultaneously. It is all just a movie that we're projecting onto the screen. It has no validity whatsoever. And it's like, we are the screen. And we watch this movie on the screen, and if a bomb goes off, we realize, it's like when we're identified with the film that's being projected onto the screen, when the bomb goes off, we think something has been destroyed or something has been this or been that, but in reality, we're just the screen observing this.
Well,
in that space.
In many ways,
destroyed by a fire.
In many ways, I see what you're saying, Dr. Joe, but here's how I look at it, and it goes back to what we discussed before. The movies that we are watching on the screen or inner mind, most of the time, are not our own movies. They're other people's movies. We spend our time watching other people's movies, reacting to other people. So what we need to do is to recognize our spiritual self, go upstairs, become a divine projector, and create an Oscar level, produce our own Oscar movie, a winning movie, and cast ourselves as the stars and as the perfect lovers, instead of looking out there all the time. We are a divine projector. The way that the world is not the way that it is. It is the way that we perceive it. And as we change, as we evolve spiritually, become more loving beings, the way that the world appears will be totally different. The world never really changes. All it does, all life is in the physical plane, is just, reassembling of the same elements over and over again to produce different looking things, but it's the same thing all the time. But our perception of it has to do with how we look at ourselves from the inside, and then when we look out, it changes. When we're ready, we just move on to a higher plane, to a higher body. We tend to reincarnate over and over again into physical bodies until we learn our lessons. And the lesson is we are children of God. Love is all there is. It's that simple. We exist because of God's love. And I remember when I signed on to Facebook last year, I didn't know what I was doing, and I could see millions of people just expressing and emoting whatever they felt. It was just negative, positive, it was all this, and I thought, wow, a lot of people are having a hard time. They have forgotten who they are. They're reacting to the negativity and to the strife and war out there, and I started just suggesting positive things, little recommendations, inspirational ideas, and people would say, wow, it sounds like you're talking to me. I really needed to hear that. And all I was doing was just channeling little bits of love that was awakening within them their spiritual nature. Life is really nothing more than how we perceive it. We create the world. The world is nothing more than a reflection of our inner states of consciousness. And as a collective group of human beings, we have made the planet the way that it is, but as individuals, we can make it a better place by making ourselves more loving, by allowing love to pass through us.
Well, hey, on that note, we need to take a quick break. We're at the top of the hour. You want us to hang in there, Raven?
Do I want to what?
Do you still want to hang with us for a little longer?
Well, it's up to everybody else. I'm really enjoying the conversation, but I tend to ramble on sometimes. So
no, I'm enjoying it. I think
we're all pretty good at that, I think. Okay, well, the three of us, Swami and Doctor and Sri Gawn Fahr, and Nicole, let's ramble on and learn more about our spiritual soul.
Awesome. We'll be right back with you guys.
I still meet people who believe that in tough times that Big Brother will save their skin. Really. The list of cities and states that are bankrupt is growing as I speak. Let's face it, you are the first line of defense in a crisis. Do you have an extra supply of storable food and water? The stores will be empty in a matter of hours in a crisis. Look, if you're willing to face reality, call Jan LeBaron at Healthy Harvest, and she can help you get started no matter your budget. Healthy Harvest carries a full line of emergency preparedness and food storage products. including 300 different dehydrated and freeze-dried foods. She has vital information on water storage and purification, emergency evacuation kits, and supplies. Jan LeBaron at Healthy Harvest is in the business of saving lives. Your life, your family's. Call Jan, toll-free 888-311-8940. 888-311-8940. Call now.
I am an autonomous government agent here to steal your livelihood. Not so fast. I'm Sovereign Filing Solutions.
And I'm the Sovereign. We're teamed up
To bring you,
the truth without censorship.
are you tired of being fed multi-million-dollar media lies?
Are you ready for the real story?
Sovereign Filing Solutions has teamed up with the Sovereign newspaper to make sure you get it.
And not the BS this guy behind me wants to feed you.
Take the step, help make the change. Oh, come on. That's not even fair. How are we supposed to rule indiscriminately if you know what's going on?
Join us as we explore the World Cup. Jumping ship with Captain Gawn will take you on a trip to a sustainable life in the coming time. Join us as we discover how to build sustainable housing, water reclamation and recycling techniques, growing, preserving, and preparing your own food, and rebuilding not only your lives and your homes, but your communities. That's Jumping Ship with Captain Gawn, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 to 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Saturday on Freedomizer Radio.
And we're going to have to come to the grips with the fact that they told us exactly what they were going to do. They wrote a document called the Project for a New American Century.
Don't ever say I didn't warn you. That's about all one can do. Anything these creatures say, the opposite is probably true. But every day, their grip is getting stronger. We must not pull the tree of evil any longer. Every day, the silence getting closer. Will you sit back and watch? I do not talk about
What can I get with 2.3 trillion? When does a citizen become a civilian? When did the heroes morph into the villains? How can 2 planes powderize 3 buildings? These are questions that could get you murked, politically, socially, physically, put into the dirt. Many swear that there's some kind of conflict of interest within. The conflict depends upon what you're interested in. You can chant 9/11 was an inside job all day until you say them with God and pay closer attention to Flight 175 and the odd cylindrical pod beneath the fuselage. Then it's 2 plus 2 level addition after you factor in the flight termination systems. Then flash back to the cash the good rabbi stole, September 10th style, right down the rabbit hole. You can get unlimited corporate news. You can have any mercenary you choose. What can I get with 2.3? You can steal a couple million souls. You can get everything under control. Initially, the Pentagon whip was not an act of randomness. It murdered accountants, bookkeepers, and budget analysts. That side of the building was retrofitted prior to this to withstand bomb blast, a nickname to catch a miss. If that will give you some kind of clue why they glued the mortar, maybe you should take some medication for your new disorder. If buildings are burning, don't ever trust a news reporter with 267 stories of gruesome slaughter. Don't ever mention Dubs Zakeem and trillion stolen, much less missile-equipped Boeings, even remote controlling with System Planning Corporation International. The folks that see if you got some buildings you like to crash into. But that's impossible without the proper capital. That's why I'm asking you what you would do with unimaginable wealth. So much money you can't delve in it. Enough to buy 10 presidents and 12 senates. What can I get with 2.3? You can get unlimited corporate news. That's right. What can I get with 2.3? You can have any mercenary you choose. All night. What can I get with 2.3? You can steal a couple million souls. Indeed. What can I get with 2.3? You can get everything under control. Now that's greed. What can I get? What can I get? What
It took me about a year to start hating the 9/11 victims' families. It took me about a year. And I had such compassion for them, and I really, I wanted to help them.
That's about a millionth of what you can get with 2.3 trillion. Some clown named Glenn Beck fucking with a Pentagon talking point of how he hates the 9/11 victims' families. But that didn't roll over too well, did it, Glenn? They're well aware they can no longer create a consensus as effectively as they used to. So they parade some other clown on the other side of the spectrum named Geraldo to tacitly give 9/11 truth a 6-minute segment semblance of credence, as if we didn't have that 9 years ago. Dummy. The system is designed to make you think anything is funny. Pretty soon you won't be able to buy anything with your monopoly money. Dummy. What can I get with 2.3 trillion? 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 2.3 trillion.
Freedomizer, NickieNix back here with you. And what I'm going to do real quick right before I bring in Raven and everyone else, I was just going to read literally the very first paragraph from the introduction of his book, Love's True Home. And this is exactly what it says, and I actually thought it was quite appropriate. May each and every one of you behold and celebrate your true spiritual nature as soul and recognize it in others. We are tears of joy born in the eyes of God. Together we form a magnificent river of divine love pulsing in and out of the heart of life. But hey, they tended to go along with where we were right before, but hey, Raven, your mic's back open, so welcome back.
Thank you very much, and thank you for reading that. I want to share a poem with you right now, if that's okay.
No, that's awesome. Go for it.
You know that my book, Love's True Home, it's not really a storybook. It's not any kind of eloquent, statements or intellectual pronouncements. It's 1,300 of my original inspirational quotes, romantic poetry, sparkling prose and irreverent humor, and it's intended to speak to every heart and to awaken in each reader, in each of us, our true spiritual nature. And here's how I can sum it all up. I'll read you one poem. It goes like this. Have you ever gazed upon a star as it zooms across the sky, shining in its splendor and screaming its love cry? Have you ever wondered what life is, what God is, and who you are? Life is love, love is God, and you are that wondrous star. And that's how I look at it. Life is very simple. If we look for the love in everybody else and we let it pour through us, all these things that we have just been discussing and all their complications and intellectual, peculiarities and just details become not meaningless, but become less important. It's really simple. Love each other. It really is that simple. And I'm not talking about human love. I'm talking about divine love.
Yeah, because we hear love, and it's been hallmarked. It's now become nothing more than a commercialized entity. And that's what we've accepted because the control is still in our hands. That's I think the major confusion that exists here. But yeah, we always conceive of it has to be between a man and a woman when you hear the word love. So thanks to Hallmark.
Yeah, and the further we are from divine love, this is my opinion, the further we are from divine love, I think the more attached we become to our ideas and our possessions, and we forget our spiritual nature. So it just takes practice. It's normal for human beings to use our imagination in a negative way, and it just takes a conscious desire to become more loving souls.
That sounds good, and on that note, I think I'll bring in Swami. So, hey, Swami.
Namaste. I believe everything everybody's saying because it's all true on one level or another. If you were to like break things down into levels, dimensions, that sort of thing. But it's great because we've had these things. We've had these experiences directly, which allow us to speak in this way. But that really doesn't do anything for those listening who have not had that experience yet, because thought does not produce the experience. True? Anyone? I don't know. Did thought produce anyone's experience?
See, we're all just sitting here enjoying the day. We're like, oh, yeah.
Look, Swami, how about this kind of attitude? I know what you're saying, and in many ways, there is no true, because, you know, in order for me as a spiritual being to evolve, for me to have freedom and for me to have love, I have to grant you your freedom, and I have to allow you to express yourself. That's just the way I see life. So I'm not going to say it's true or it's not true, because I have no right to say that. All I can do is respect your point of view and allow you to be who you are.
No, I was referring to your direct experience, where you speak from, where you sit, because you think differently than those who listen to us right now.
No, but let's say, I'm sure that all our listeners and those who aren't listening, it doesn't matter. There's certain things that cannot be denied. As an example, if you smile or someone smiles at you in a genuine way, or if someone does something that somehow uplifts you, or something that somehow inspires another, that is something you can observe love in action. So what is going on there? This is something that can't be discussed intellectually, but if you find yourself uplifted by somebody, or vice versa, there's something very magical going on there. That is love at work behind the scenes. It has nothing to do with the mind or this point of view or that point of view. That is an actual dynamic expression of divine love. Everybody can relate to that.
Not those who haven't experienced it yet, though. It's an idea to them, you know,
true.
which does not jive with their experience on the planet yet.
That's true.
There's a lot of people who feel that way. I talk to them all the time. You know, they're like, yeah, you know, I can sit and talk about big experiences, all that stuff, and how in the very end, nothing's happening whatsoever.
Well, that's true, and we're not here to convince anybody.
That's the code. You know, but I like to, well, okay, forgive me. My task as a Swami is to bring people from where they're at to where I'm at.
Oh.
And I represent a lineage that goes back thousands of years and been handed down from master to disciple up until today. My guru is the first white American-born man to become one of the 80 Mahamandaleshwars within Hinduism. So we are exceedingly traditional, and we come from the time when this teaching that we discuss and this feeling was obvious to everybody. It was that way some time ago, but it's not that way now during the current expression as we see it.
Well, my experience has been this one, that any time I hear somebody telling me they're going to lead me to reality, I always assume they're leading me to their reality. And that's
I just
create
lead
our
people
own
inside
reality.
themselves. Nope, I just lead people inside themselves. That's it. There's nothing to do with my physical body, has nothing to do with it. My physical body represents like a vessel where this energy rests, and those who come to me can share that. It's a vibrational thing. It actually happens. It's called Shaktipat. It's called divine grace, and it happens all the time. And it happens because I've been made to be this way by my guru in following this lineage. So I have a very specific purpose, is to spread this knowing. You know, I'm not trying to disrespect anything y'all do. Y'all speak exactly from what you know. What else can any of us do? And we happen to know more and a higher level of things than a lot of people on the planet at the moment who are totally involved in the material world and taking no time away from that to know that which is natural to us all. So
Well,
spiritual evolution is an individual process. I mean, I don't look at myself as being any different than anybody else, as possessing any more knowledge or being any more loving. But I do know that when I recognize it in myself and I see it in others, I see very magical things occurring between us, and I see people sharing the love. To me, it's any kind of spiritual teaching. I don't care if it's a day old or a trillion years old. If it doesn't speak to the heart, it's not worth a pinch of mouse poop to me. A true spiritual teaching has to speak to the heart. And today, just look around us. Guru mania, fast food, salvation is everywhere. Everybody professing to have to answer to our woes and to our problems. And, most of them are talking to the head. You get these things like, the nowness, the isness, the presence, the consciousness. You get all these nebulous mental abstractions and these crazy intellectual acrobats, and they're talking to everybody's head. And a lot of people are going, wow, that sounds awesome. Whoa, those are incredible words. I feel so energized. They go home and they scratch their heads and they say, now how can I apply that to my everyday life? And the true spiritual teaching is something that we can apply in our lives, not just to make our lives more fulfilling and more joyous, but it's something that we can share, because love, which is what my book is all about, love is a gift from God that we share with others. And if it doesn't do that, well, to me, it's just nothing but yakety-yak mental abstract.
Okay, can I be heard now?
Yes, you're here.
Oh, no, I was disconnected for a while, and so I was trying to be in the conversation, and I was in some side chat room or something. Anyways.
Patrick, it was just I was waiting to, finish that conversation to bring you back in. That's why it was, the first Raven, and I brought Swami in. I was bringing you in. It was
perfect. No problem at all. No problem at all. I have a question for Raven, but then I'm going to address Swami. Swami, I think you bring up a phenomenal point. And in my teachings and stuff like that, I share that, the old concept that what we hear, we remember, what we see, we learn, and what we experience, we know.
Yes.
And so we all are we understand so much because we have seen and we have learned and remembered things, but there's very few of us who have gone through that experience. So you were saying, how is it that these words can, possibly help to evolve someone else's, ability to have the knowing as opposed to just the understanding. I mean, I have millions of opinions out there about what's happening, yet we can come here with a knowing and share all these understandings, but still we all know that we're just playing this game in this third dimension.
Right.
So that any model, any model that we can create or pretend to create and what have you is, any thought. Any thought of I, any thought of me, any thought of them, any aspect of that is but an echo. It's just but an echo of where life is really occurring. Where life is actually occurring. We talk about evolution. We touched on that a little bit earlier. And we talked about, evolution. Well, evolution isn't something that happened. Evolution isn't something that's going to happen. Evolution is what's happening. We are evolution right now in this conversation. And as a result of this thing called the law of repeatlessness, where there's no two moments, no two experiences, anything that are ever the same. And every moment, life is completely transforming. Life is, in and of itself, a state of repeatlessness. Therefore, when we are able to grok that, when we're able to really embrace that every moment is fresh and new, then we no longer attempt to recreate that flavor or that feeling or that meditative state or that orgasm or whatever it is, because we can't. It's not physically possible, because every moment is going to be fresh and new. And so as a result of that, we then no longer try to define it that this is the way it is. This is the way it is. Because the moment we make these decisions frozen in time, we're separated from that self. Every moment, right now, we drink in and embrace what is. Not what we project it is, not what we thought it was, but just what is. Because this is the only place where it's happening. Right now. That's where life is occurring, and it is from there that the knowing comes. So if you can see it, hear it, think it, smell it, project it, taste it, whatever, that's not it. Those are just simply vibrations that then go through in time, this thing called the biocomputer brain, and it creates a reflection or an echo of what is it. But when, when Raven's talking about, that the part that's watching this experience and imagining these things, it is that place right here and now in the repeatlessness moment. That is all that exists. And when we can help with our words to guide through whatever lineage with this association or no longer identification with this thinking thing. This thinking thing is not who we are. It's what we are. We have one. It's doing its thing. But who we are is that which is listening to it. Now, we're not the thinker. We're not the projector. We're not the formulator. We're the listener. And when you dive into that listening, then you realize that there's only one listening. And we're all listening from the same place, because when we say certain things, it's like we're reminded of, oh, yeah. Well, how are we reminded? What's being reminded? What is feeling that sense of oneness? It is the oneness itself. Now, to bring it into that here and now, Raven, I want to ask you a question concerning your book and some of your quotes and what have you, and that love is all that is, and allow us to be what God is in that love. I'm struggling so hard right now with what I'm observing on the planet, in the joy and elation of the murder of this, if it actually even happened, of this character named Osama bin Laden. And dancing in the streets and all the jokes on Daily Show, and it's like, it is the most disgusting thing I've ever witnessed. The same thing happened when Hussein, Saddam Hussein was killed. And I remember I walked down the street and I saw a friend. He says, oh, it happened. It's so great. And I said, what? He says, they got him. They got Saddam Hussein. And they were actually, happy that this being is being murdered. And wow. So bringing it right here and now. How do you speak into that perspective and help to transform that? Because I know that that's not the way.
Well, here's how I look at it. I mean, it goes back to the same old thing, Dr. Joe, and that is, the mind has the power of drawing our attention into the outer world. Personally, I couldn't care less about Osama bin Laden.
There you go.
One way or another. Why do we choose, and why do other people choose to focus on that in our lives? The fact that Osama bin Laden is dead or isn't dead, or all the atrocities he committed or didn't commit, and all these intellectual ideas, all these things based on fear and doubt and worry and anxiety and war and all this stuff. This is how the lower worlds are designed. The lower world is a training ground for soul. Mind has only one purpose. If mind is running the show, its purpose is to keep us from looking at our true self and to keep us looking outside of ourselves. And as long as we look outside of ourselves, of course, we're going to worry, we're going to be frustrated, we're going to be bummed out, we're going to be angry, we're going to be vindictive, we're going to be depressed. But if we look at our inner selves first and we discover our spiritual nature, and then, for me, when I look out there and I see the Osama bin Laden story, which is one of a billion stories, I mean, people are dying all the time. The media, for whatever reason, chooses to make that the story of the day, and most of us allow them to draw us into their little worlds of doom and gloom. I don't get drawn into that. I try to look beyond all that and pull way back and see what's going on with humanity as a collective consciousness. And I see that as a group, humanity is really lost right now. But as individuals, it always goes back to the individuals. In our hearts is love. I mean, really, forget everything else. Why are we here? Why do we exist? We exist because of God's love. And as individuals, it always goes back to the same thing for me. If we look for the best in everybody else, we will see the best, and our lives will change. We won't worry about what's going on out there. We won't be concerned about the doom story of the day. The world is designed that way.
Hey, we're about to have to take a break, so I'm going to make one last comment because I can't help it either. I mean, it's a great conversation, in general. The whole idea that, we have to have this focus that comes from mainstream media, that comes from the government, that sits there and tells us that we have to be entertained, that we need to believe whatever's thrown in front of us. Why? So that we don't step out and enjoy the life that we're existing right here now doing. That's this whole issue. It's so that we fear our neighbor, so that we don't actually take control over our own lives. We allow that control to be given to this mom and dad or government state, whatever you want to refer to the powers that be that have existed, this control that we've allowed to exist, which, again, this control can disappear quite quickly. But the thing is that it's none of this is necessary, because if you get out and you have fun and you live your life, then and you actually find this state of love, and you can grow, especially from a spiritual standpoint that's not restricted by dogma or any other controlling force that says you have to live by certain, I almost cussed there, freaking rules, whatever that is, you know. When you realize this is when you can grow, and this is when you can see that anybody that's different from you, it's not that they're different. It's just that they are a different extension or a new, something you can learn from. It's not something to look as they're different, I need to attack. This is a beautiful time to look out and see that everything is changing, whether you feel it or not, and that is beautiful. It truly, truly is.
Yeah, I think you've made a good point there. I really do.
Awesome. Well, we got to take another commercial. Well, hey, Raven, you up for sticking around for a little bit longer?
Yes, I just want to say, repeat the same thing over and over again. Life is really basic. It's very simple. As more conscious souls accept God's love, the brighter life becomes. So just turn yourself on. Everybody, turn yourself on. It's about yourself. It's not about anybody else.
Perfectly said. Hey, Freedomizers, we'll be right back with you.
Hi, folks. CT here. I want to talk to you about a great preparedness resource, tomorrowsharvest.com. Whether it's an economic collapse or nature's fury, there's no feeling more secure than knowing that your loved ones will be well fed. If it's time to bug out or just camping with the family, Tomorrow's Harvest offers high-quality, cost-effective, and long-term smart food storage. Get your free sample. The choices are great. From blueberry pancakes to the cowboy chili, no one else has the meal variety of Tomorrow's Harvest. They also provide other survival necessities. Check out the various packages and customize your meal supply. Remember, there's no reason for fear today when you prepare with Tomorrow's Harvest. Go to www.tomorrowsharvest.com and tell them you're Freedomizer.
Freedomizer Radio, waking people up. They have their little puppets and underlings and clicks, and pretty much every government on this planet will do their bidding as they push us into this one-world system. That's how it works. Somebody needs to carve that thing up, and I think I might be the man for the job. Be the man for the job. Waking people up. Just a tinfoil. If I got to break down the information, waking people up. Every time I get to have this conversation, it sends them a little deeper down the rabbit hole. Look a little deeper. Freedomizer Radio, waking people up.
Are you one of the tens of people who are tired of seeing chemtrails? Fed up with the government geoengineering you every other day? Take a dose of La Mecha Long Chemtrail Remover Daily, and you'll never worry about weather modification again. With great ingredients and quality vitamins from Mexico and China, like fluoride, barium, high fructose corn syrup, and colloidal mercury. Your brain will be a virtual Etch-a-Sketch lickety-split. La Mecha Long Chemtrail Remover. Wow, I don't even remember the tagline for this, so it must be great.
You've been fantastic, and I hope you enjoyed it. There is a point. Is there a point to all this? Let's find a point. Is there a point to my act? I would say there is. I have to.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride, and we kill those people. Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of them as one.
You are a divine being. You matter. You count.
So scientists, they're publishing this in the journals. There's some great texts. Many of your guests have talked about this field. Scientists are looking at this and they're saying, okay, well, you know, this field is out there. What do we do with it?
This triple sanctuary is home to the pineal gland, or third eye. The enigmatic cobra rising from the third eye of the pharaoh is so prevalent that it is almost synonymous with Egyptian art. What did it mean? The central aspect of the pharaohs was that they were humankind perfected and elevated to a divine plane. The cobra over the pineal gland area served as the perfect insignia for their status. It also connects to a concept found in countless cultures. It echoes and amplifies the similar concepts at the heart of Hindu and Asian sacred teachings. The transformation into a higher spiritual manifestation is symbolized by the Hindus as a kundalini snake. It represents life energy, redirected and refined for the creation of a higher spiritual presence. Similarly, throughout tantric, alchemical, and modern magical disciplines, it is an indicator of the universal pursuit of higher consciousness.
A curious note concerning the Uraeus serpent, the cobra that appears over the forehead of the pharaoh's headpiece and such, while obviously a symbol of the activation of the Ajna chakra, the third eye chakra, in the psychic system of mankind. It also points to a secret form of worship, open only to initiates.
You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
And this is the place where I believe it serves us to go into some of the most ancient traditions, some of them 5,000, 7,000 years old in the case of the Vedas.
The crisis, and there's always crisis in the world, especially now, it seems to me, is a crisis in consciousness. A crisis that cannot anymore accept the old norms, the old patterns, the ancient traditions, a particular way of life, whether it is the American way or the European way or the Asiatic way.
When the etheric body gets sufficient cosmic energy, by more and more meditation, our third eye gets perfect.
You are a divine being. You matter. You count.
Here we perceive crystal clear visions of this plane and other planes. In third eye perfection, we see many things clearer than the physical visions. We see other frequency realities. We see the things which are not present in the realm of the five senses. We feel so many things which we cannot express with words.
All right, Freedomizers, NickieNix back here with you. Let me bring in Raven. Hey, Raven. I know it's a little bit of a long clip, and I probably ended a little bit sooner than it could have been, but I found it appropriate, so I figured we got to where we needed to with that one. What did you think?
I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to share something with you because I know what happens. I do a lot of interviews, and I talk to people, and you know, it always goes back to the same old thing. We always, and I include myself when I say this, I'm not judging anybody, but the mind, for whatever reason, always tends to complicate everything into the most, you know, sometimes it seems just confusing ways. I want to read you a passage from my book, and it pretty well states how I look at life and what the book is all about, and what I believe is the inherent nature of all of us as spiritual beings. And here, this is a vision that I had, call it a dream. In the center of a serene, majestic ocean, I sat next to my master in a tiny boat. How vast and beautiful it is, I gasped in wonder. Smiling with sparkling, benevolent eyes, he whispered gently, the ocean you behold is merely the surface of your precious heart. Immerse yourself into its glorious depths, sweet soul, and discover your spiritual nature. You are the splendor of God's divine love. And that's what this is all about for me. That's what life is all about. We are individualized atoms of God's divine love. It's really that simple. And as long as we choose and allow ourselves to be drawn into the outer world with all its complications, we're always going to be anxious and disappointed. It all starts by gazing and recognizing our true spiritual nature and seeing it within other people. We are God's children. We are channels for God's love. Love is a gift from God that we share with others. It really is that simple. And as long as we keep reminding ourselves that, we'll become more and more aware of our spiritual nature, and our life will start to become more fulfilling, more joyous, and we'll notice how our joy and our qualities of being loving beings will actually uplift others, because Spirit knows what's best for everybody, but we have to allow Spirit to move through us before we can see changes in our life.
Well stated. Hey, I'm going to bring Swami back in real quick. We actually have another caller online too, but hey, Swami.
Namaste.
Namaste always. What did you think?
I am blissed and blissful.
Nice.
I think, Doc, did you ask me what you wanted to ask me earlier? You had mentioned something you wanted to address to me, and I didn't know if we covered.
Dr.
Well, it wasn't a question as much as it was in support. It was. Am I heard right now?
Supporting you. Yeah, you are. Yeah. We're listening.
Yeah, no, it was less than a question as it was an idea that you were saying, how do these words that we're using right now, how does that help someone to have the experience or the experiential knowledge of what it is we're discussing here? Because we have an experiential aspect to our perception. And so, you were asking, how does what we're talking about now help someone who hasn't had that experience? And my desire in what I was saying was to say that, the idea is that beyond our perception, in other words, any of the thinking, any of this discussion is just a reflection or an echo of the truth from where we are speaking. And so the key element in what you're saying is the disidentification with those perceptions, and it's a very yogic path in that regard. So, hello?
give me a second. I want to bring in this other caller real quick, okay? Do you mind?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Hey, Raven, you good with that?
Hey, I'm cool with everything, baby. Let her rip.
All right, cool. Caller from the 818 area code. Sure with wow. We've got
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. I really enjoy what Raven is saying, and this is so funny. I think he was brought to me today. Our vibes were hitting each other because I am a Facebook friend of his.
Oh, who are you? Cool.
I'm the fairy on the Susan.
Oh, it's really nice
The
to hear
one
your
with the
voice.
fairies and the one, you know who I am?
I think I do, and it's wonderful to hear your voice.
Yes, it's good to hear you. I'm the one who thought you could write songs with your poetry. You know who I am now?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And so I believe that when I think too much, it causes difficulty. When I just live in the moment and just enjoy, like on Earth Day, I just enjoyed the whole day. I was there for 7 hours just playing and having dancing and spiral, hula hooping, and not thinking. I had a fabulous time, and I was calmer. My feet didn't hurt or anything. I think when people use their brain too much, it can make you stiff and affect your body. Does that make
My
sense?
experience also.
Yes? Just live, enjoy the moment, and be childlike, and dance in the in the meadows like I do when I was there on Earth Day.
When you do that, Susan, it's Susan, right?
Yes.
When you do that, other people pick up on it. When you're living in the moment, the vibrations of your loving energy actually on their own flow through you and uplift other people.
You know, that's funny you should say that because I was at a gathering at an event, and I met over 100 people, and I didn't realize it, that I went from every station from Shakespeare to Alice in Wonderland, and people thought I fit in. I even was given the name Enchanted, and I even squashed grapes, and I didn't realize that I was putting on such positive energy to everybody that I was around. They put me on a YouTube. But I never knew I possessed this thing.
Exactly. Spirit knows what is best for everybody, and when you're living in the moment as you were there, unbeknownst to you, or maybe, unbeknownst to you, you are being a vehicle for God's love. I think that's the underlying purpose for us being here.
Definitely agree with you there. I'm not sure. I think actually we lost that call. I'm not sure what happened.
We lost who?
Sorry. We lost that call.
Not Susan.
Yeah, I know.
It was so It was so nice to have some feminine energy, sort of tempering the waters. That the Swami and Doctor and I were sort of there.
Okay, and what am I?
Well, I mean, you're I don't consider you to be. I consider you to be sort of the vehicle for the entire thing. So I wasn't excluding you. It was just you were like.
No, it's okay. I'll even say I honestly do not, even just in general, and I think she's back, actually. Cool. There she goes. Hey, Susan, are you back? I know I pulled you in before it said so, but you were the same number, so sorry. I brought you back.
Hello,
I think
Susan?
she's there.
Yeah, her mic's open.
Hello? I think we got disconnected, but I just want to thank you. Is it okay to talk a little bit more or no?
You're good. You're good.
All right. I just want to say that I enjoyed you so much because I've had some down days, and when I saw the wonderful poetry and the artwork that you had put on the page, it made me feel good. And I do believe you are bringing joy and love, and you say you're the master of the universe. I call you because you're a teacher, and my family's from England, so we use master as a teacher, and therefore I am a child of learning about the universe. And I even used to a friend the other day saying I went to the University of Love. You know what you put on the Facebook?
Yes.
Yes, and my heart is what you say, the golden, the key to the golden something, yes?
Well, I say there's many sort of references to that, yes.
Yes, and so I want to thank you so much to continue what you do, and I love to see your work on the page, and it makes me feel good. So I just want to say thank you again, and I guess I was meant to speak to you today.
Well, I thank you for saying that, and you're doing exactly the same thing as all loving souls do, because I know I've learned one thing. Once again, it always goes down to very basic, loving kind of feelings and remarks. I have learned that extending our noble thoughts and our warm feelings and acts of loving kindness to others is like offering them a magic carpet ride. Love elevates their hearts, it enlivens their senses, and it liberates them from the shackles of their minds while reflecting back to us the love that we have shared, just like you have done just now, Susan, and like Dr. Joe and Swami and Nicole are doing. By recognizing that love within us and sharing it, it actually has a calming, healing, and uplifting effect on many other people, way beyond, our acts of kindness linger long after we have performed them or shared them.
Thank you. And I'll just say one more thing, that I was a child of love, and I always lived in the moment in my own world. And the journey that I lived made me get involved with the negative people in my life. But now those negative people have gone away, and this year the positive people are coming towards me. If you understand that someone said the dark had to come before you can appreciate the light, does that make sense?
Yes.
And now the people of the light are coming towards me, and the dark people are going away. And I'm in a happy place, and the people around me will not let me feel this negativity. And therefore, when I'm with positive people, I soar to up to the yonders. So I just want to say again, thank you so much, and I guess our vibrations were meant to talk and continue what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Susan. Please, I would really be grateful if you would take the time to post a little note on one of my Facebook pages so I can tap in back into you and go to your wall and post something.
All right, I'll say I enjoyed talking to you today on the computer. Yes? Something like that?
Yeah.
Or on my show. You can listen to the show. You can be nice and maybe promote a little bit.
Yeah, I can say I enjoyed listening to the show, and I mentioned the show on it. I'll be glad to. Thank you so much.
I'm grateful for that.
All right, I shall do that. All right, have a wonderful day. And I love the pictures as I'm looking at it. Life is wonderful, because I must say, I was a little at a sad point today because of my son's issues, but by hearing your voice, and it just was meant to be. Your vibrations brought me. I didn't expect to come on, or I just happened to turn on the computer, and there you were.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, every day is the perfect day for love.
So, yes, it is. Okay. I will write something. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you, Susan. So, of course, you can listen in or join us back in the chat room as well. But everybody else's mic, of course, is still here. So we still, of course, have Raven here. So there were a couple of the quotes. One of these quick ones is just kind of funny. Well, okay, not completely, because everything has a serious note when it comes down to it. That's the whole thing about laughter, is you can actually bring someone an idea without forcing it down their throats, I guess.
Yeah.
So, what would you, go ahead, I thought I heard you say something.
Well, I'm not hearing you as clearly as I could be. Are you saying that you wanted to speak something, a quote from my book? Or
yeah, I was about to, and I was saying that, at least with the sense of humor, that at least at that point, it tends to lighten the whole thing instead of shoving something down someone's throat when it comes to trying to, I guess, bring a point across. So, and this was one of those. So I was going to say it was funny, but it's not really funny. I thought it was really good. And it says this: it is a very good thing to have abilities in your faith. Why not kick it up a notch and have faith in your abilities? Get off your divine butt and start spreading love. Woohoo! Right?
Yeah, that's how I live life. That's how I do it.
I like that one. Swami, Dr. Joe, y'all have a comment?
No, I'm just enjoying the conversation and all the love. I'm good, man.
Yeah. I can very clearly feel the people that will respond just like Susan did. You know, I'm very, very glad she had the opportunity to connect with Raven. That was a real neat thing to just, you know, sit to the side of and watch people interact with those who inspire them. Regardless of how that inspiration comes about, as long as it's there, it's a wonderful thing to watch.
Well, I'll tell you something that's really beautiful about inspiration, because I didn't realize till I was a writer. I didn't even set out to write my new book, Love's True Home. I just realized it was writing me, and then at that point I surrendered, and I became Spirit's pen, essentially. And I spent 4 months, 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. A Spirit poured through me. I was unable to fight it. I almost ate no food. I was just a vehicle for God's divine love. And I noticed as these words poured out onto Facebook and Twitter, how people were just being inspired and uplifted and were responding in a like way and sharing it with their friends. And I just, sometimes words that come through my fingers onto the keyboard and onto Facebook, and sometimes I'd read them and I would just burst into tears, because the energy and the inspirational love was just so powerful. I'd be touched deeply, and I'd say to myself, thank you, God. Thank you, Spirit, for using me as a vehicle to uplift other people. And at that point, I realized for the first time in my life that we are vehicles for God's love. And it just wiped away all my intellectual perceptions and calculations and definitions. And it just made it so simple to have that experience. And from that point on, I became grateful, and it hasn't stopped. I'm just about to finish my next book, and it's all it is just finding ways to bypass the mind and awaken that spiritual nature within each and every one of us. It's been a very humbling experience, and I realized, I think more than anything else, that we don't have to be a master or a guru or a teacher or a saint to spread and share the wonder and glory of God's divine love. We're all capable of sharing that love because it resides within each and every one of us. It's been a beautiful experience for me, and I've met so many wonderful, loving souls along the way.
That's just so well stated. I don't know how else to put things. That was perfect. No, Susan, we seem to put the responsibility of ourselves outside of that realm. Exactly.
Yeah, that's the way the world is designed, so there's no reason to feel bad or sad about that. But recognizing it, I think, it can make a big difference in our lives. In today's, as an example, today there's a belief among many people that there's something coming in 2012 or sometime in the future, someone's going to come down to the planet Earth and make things right. There's the theories and concepts, religious, philosophical, spiritual ideas of the Messiah, the Savior. But you know what? I've come to this conclusion, and this is my opinion only. Nobody can save us. Many await the return of a great Redeemer, or a Messiah. This idea originates in the mind again. It promises that somebody else is going to solve our problems. That's never going to happen. The mind is always presenting us these ideas to take our attention away from our true self. It looks at the future or hoping for salvation, when in fact, I don't think there is anything to save. As children of God, we are already free, but we have to realize it on our own. And as long as we continue to look outside of ourselves, we're always going to be hungry for the answers, not realizing that the truth resides within. It's all about the divine heart.
Go ahead, Swami, you have a comment?
I agree 100%. Every journey starts with a first step. And that realization right there that he was speaking of is what is the very first step for a lot of people in order to get their thinking in the right way, in a way that is not painful to them. Okay? And as that happens, there will be, as just by magnetic attraction, something will pull your attention, like Raven's book does for people. They feel this. He's sharing this. They respond to that. And a lot of them not really knowing that this is even possible, maybe. So they're just totally like, wow, you know? And then things go on and on and on. And like I said, I've been, as far as the human experience goes, and sent back to share it and enable others to do it. But I'm aware there's more. I'm just not, while I'm one with it, I can't talk of it. The words don't exist for me. Language actually nullifies reality, in my opinion. Because even to speak, you must separate.
Yes,
you have to separate that which is inseparable, even to speak of it. So, but it's just a great time to listen to what everybody's got to say.
Isn't it beautiful?
No, I really don't think that there is any journey's end. You know, love is all there is. So it's like Dr. Joe was saying at the very beginning. We tend to think in lineal terms, you know, the beginning, the duration, the end. But in reality, that's just the way of the lower world. Love is all there is, and at some point we begin to recognize that within ourselves and others, and life takes on a different meaning. And we still have to deal with our problems every day because we all have them. But we tend, at that point, when we realize that love is all there is, we tend to approach our problems in a much more relaxed, creative way, and then we're presented with new problems. And there's no avoiding challenges, and I don't like to use the word problems too much because there's a connotation of something negative. By problems, I mean we are here to learn, and the way that we go about learning is determined by how we view ourselves first and foremost. When we recognize love, we start to have a much more fulfilled life and are less bothered by the outside events occurring all the time. And love is the only thing that can ever be exhausted. And, you know, really, there is no journey's end. There's no beginning or end. Like Dr. Joe said, we're just always in the moment. But the mind thinks here, now, there, before, after. It's a process. Gradually, we recognize it in ourselves. We realize that we exist because of God's love. There's nothing else to say about that.
Love is the only true answer. We are all connected, no matter how much division one would like us to see, yet the division is necessary. It's one and the same. It's a beautiful idea, a beautiful reality, and that's just it. To me, it's just beautiful. So, we're at the top of the hour again. Raven, so you enjoying this? Like I said, it's already been 2 hours. We still have an hour to go if you want to stick around. That's up to you.
Well, I'm thinking that now we should find a way to slowly, you know, get on our surfboards and kind of very slowly to sort of sail off into the horizon, because I think it's time to move on now. In other words, it's time to, I think, bring the show to an end.
Well, for you, I still have an hour to go, so.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
What a lovely life you live.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, I'm going to say goodbye now then.
Well, we appreciate your time. Hey, Dr. Joe, you want to have a chance to say goodbye to our lovely guest, Raven?
Absolutely. Raven, I think we're friends on Facebook, and we've been back and forth many times in that realm, and it's really just a pleasure to meet you.
Well, Dr. Joe, could you please place a note on my Facebook page also, because I'd like to connect with you, so I'll need a reminder.
Sure, no problem at all. No problem at all. Blessings to you, brother. Thanks for all that you're surrendering to and allowing to come through. I truly appreciate it.
I thank you. And I really appreciate it, and I was touched and inspired by a lot of the things that you had to say. Very grateful to have met you and to hear your voice, and I look forward to our sharing again.
Amen, brother. So be it.
All right, and Dr. Joe, would you mind hanging out?
Sure.
You're awesome then. And Swami, do you want to say anything to Raven before we say goodbye to him?
Absolutely. Raven, the love of God within me sees and recognizes itself in you. And all green lights for you, my friend. Namaste.
Well, thank you so much for your kind, loving words, Swami. Are we connected on Facebook? Are you a Facebook person?
No, I don't do Facebook. I'm just a Swami. I'm not hooked into the internet that much, really.
But he's connected through me, and he's on Skype. So
Well,
it's
I behold your spiritual nature. You were coming through loud and clear and touching my heart, Swami. So I thank you very much for what you had to share. I'm very grateful.
You're very welcome.
hi. Well, and Raven, this is my chance to say goodbye as well.
Well, Nicole, I want to thank you, immensely for, first of all, for having a program like you do. I think you're providing a wonderful service. You're allowing loving souls to connect and share, which is really what I believe in. And I'm very grateful to you, too. And I encourage you to keep it up, baby. You're doing a wonderful job.
You're awesome, Raven, and we'll have to talk again for sure. I know you're traveling, so this is a challenge for us all. But I'm
Would it be appropriate if I close with one more quote from my book?
No, that is amazing, and I'd greatly appreciate it.
Okay, and I just want to remind all the listeners that I would love it if you came to visit me, my website, lovestruehome.com, and from there you can visit me on Facebook. I've got 3 blogs and a Twitter account, so I really love to interact. I'm not a preacher. I love to share with everybody and listen to them and, engage in some loving conversations and exchange of ideas. So I'm going to close with this quote, and this quote is based on the premise that what we experience in our life, internally and externally, is always because of our imagination. Our imagination is the most powerful gift, and we tend to use it in a negative way. So here's a positive quote from my book. It's from the chapter Inspiration. It goes like this. Your imagination is the most wonderful gift, so use it in a positive, creative manner. Perhaps you imagine that your heart has wheels, sails, or even wings. However you see it, know that your divine heart can set you free. As soul, you are a divine instrument to which the love of God flows. Imagine that, eh?
I love that. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And for all those in the chat room, there's a link to the website. So thank you so much for joining me, Raven. And as always, I look forward to future communication with you.
Thank you, and may Spirit's love be with you in all ways.
Namaste, Raven.
Bye-bye.
And Freedomizers, hang in there. We got a quick break, and we'll be right back with you.
This is Mercy. If you're listening to this message, warriors, you are the resistance. Warriors, you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Read about it in the Sovereign, newspaper of the resistance. Available now at newsstands everywhere. The Sovereign is a monthly 24-page tabloid newspaper featuring incendiary content about life during wartime in the age of Obama. Warriors, keep to date every month. Remember to read The Sovereign, newspaper of the resistance. Available at newsstands everywhere. This alert is for all you boppers out there in the big city, all you street people with an ear for the action. This is Mercy. If you're listening to this message, warriors, you are the resistance. This is Mercy. Mine will be the last voice you will ever hear. Don't be alarmed.
I still meet people who believe that in tough times that Big Brother will save their skin. Really. The list of cities and states that are bankrupt is growing as I speak. Let's face it, you are the first line of defense in a crisis. Do you have an extra supply of storable food or water? The stores will be empty in a matter of hours in a crisis. Look, if you're willing to face reality, call Jan LeBaron at Healthy Harvest, and she can help you get started no matter your budget. Healthy Harvest carries a full line of emergency preparedness and food storage products, including 300 different dehydrated and freeze-dried foods. She has vital information on water storage and purification, emergency evacuation kits, and supplies. Jan LeBaron at Healthy Harvest is in the business of saving lives. Your life, your family's. Call Jan, toll-free 888-311-8940. 888-311-8940. Call now.
If you have not checked out the Proof Negative show, this is what you're missing. Here we cover the news the mainstream media is too scared to cover. The mainstream media wants us to cover how many touchdowns in the latest hockey game which celebrities don't wear underwear, and the top 10 ways how to spice up your goulash. Sorry, mainstream media, humanity is at stake. I don't have time for mainstream news. The Perf Negative Show, here on Freedomizer Radio, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. to midnight Eastern.
Howdy, folks. Buford T. Slaughter here. As part of my continuing rehabilitation, and in conjunction with my anger management coach and my parole officer, I am required to do community service in the form of public service announcements. The TSA needs you. If you're the kind of guy that doesn't mind looking at naked boys and girls as they walk through the naked body scanners, or if you don't mind pulling an 82-year-old grandma out of her wheelchair, beating the heck out of her, make sure she's not carrying any bomb-making equipment, and if you don't mind taking people that object to this kind of treatment, slapping the heck out of them, pulling them in the back room, and strip searching them, then the TSA is for you. The TSA is hiring men and women to work at numerous locations around the United States, and the only qualifications are you must have longer than average index fingers, be able to sit and stare at a screen while naked people walk in front of you, and be able to take orders without any questions whatsoever. So, if you're interested in the TSA, please call 1-800-BROWN-SHIRT. 1-800-BROWN-SHIRT. And on a personal note, when the TSA does frisk you as you're going through the airport security, it is an act of love for the U.S. government. It is not an act of rape. So please do not beat them up. Thank you for your time.
We've got a system of schooling which gives a completely different impression. It's all graded. And what we do is we put the child into the corridor of this grade system with a kind of, come on, kitty, kitty, kitty. And yeah, you go to kindergarten, you know. And that's a great thing because when you finish that, you'll get into first grade. And then come on, first grade leads to second grade and so on. And then you get out of grade school, you go to high school, and it's revving up. The thing is coming. Then you're going to go to college. And by Jove, then you get into graduate school. And when you're through with graduate school, you go out to join the world. And then you get into some racket where you're selling insurance. And they've got that quota to make. And you're going to make that. And all the time, this thing is coming. It's coming. It's coming. That great thing, the success you're working for. Then when you wake up one day about 40 years old, you say, my God, I've arrived. I'm there. And you don't feel very different from what you always felt. And there's a slight letdown because supposing that I say to you, each one of you is really the great self, you know, the Brahman. And you say, well, all you've said up to now makes me fairly sympathetic to this intellectually. But I don't really feel it. What must I do to feel it really? My answer to you is this. You ask me that question because you don't want to feel it really. You're frightened of it. And therefore what you're going to do is you're going to get a method of practice so that you can put it off. So that I can say, well, I can be a long time on the way getting this thing. And then maybe I'll be worthy of it after I have suffered enough. See, because we are brought up in a social scheme whereby we have to deserve what we get. And the price that one pays for all good things is suffering. But all of that is precisely postponement. Because one is afraid here and now to see it. If you had the nerve, you know, real nerve, you would see it right away. Only that would be, you know, when one feels you shouldn't have nerve like that. Why, that would be awful. That would be, that wouldn't do at all. Because after all, I'm supposed to be poor little me. And I'm not really much of a muchness. And I'm playing the role of being poor little me. And therefore, in order to be something great, like a Buddha or a Jivan Mukta, one liberated in this life,
I ought to suffer for it. So you can suffer for it. There are all kinds of ways invented for you to do this. And you can discipline yourself, and you can gain control of your mind, and you can do all sorts of extraordinary things. I mean, you can drink water in through your rectum and do the most fantastic things. But that's just like being able to run 100 yards in 9 seconds, or push a peanut up Mount Tamalpais with your nose, or any other kind of accomplishment you want to engage in. There's absolutely nothing to do with the realization of the self. The realization of the self fundamentally depends on coming off it. You know, the sort of, when we say to people who put on some kind of an act and say, oh, come off it. And some people can come off it. They laugh and say they suddenly realize, you know, they were making fools of themselves, and they laugh at themselves and they come off it. So in exactly the same way, the guru, the teacher, is trying to make you come off it. Now, if he finds he can't make you come off it, he's going to put you through all these exercises, so that you, at the last time, when you've got enough discipline, enough suffering, and enough frustration, you'll give it all up and realize you were there for the beginning and there was nothing to realize. But the guru is very clever. He says, all right, if this is the way you have to go, this is the way you have to go. You asked for it. You came to me. I didn't invite you, you see, the guru says. You came to me and said, I want to learn yoga. Well, he said, yoga is union. You're Tattvamasi, you know, you're that. Well, no, you say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, because I only get it intellectually, I don't feel it. Oh, he says, you're one of those. So I see, I've got to satisfy you. The customer is always right. No? I've got to give you all this work to do, because you can't see directly that this is so. But he's looking at you in a funny way, you see. The guru is always saying to you, you know, what are you doing? What's your game? Imagine, for example, a father confessor, and you feel terribly guilty that you've committed murders and robberies and adulteries and fornications and all kinds of arson and injury to people and financial shenanigans. And you go to this man and say, I am a terrible sinner. Oh, he says, really? He says, I have murdered somebody. He says, how many times? And you think, oh, good Lord, this man doesn't realize how awful I am. And you recite all these things. He's perfectly calm. And then you say to him, well, you don't seem to be very shocked. He said, you haven't confessed any serious sins. He said, what do you mean by a serious sin? Well, he said, what do you think? Well, I don't know. I just feel wrong. I just feel there's something in the basis of me that feels, that tells me that I am not what I ought to be. Could it be that I'm spiritually proud? That I'm egocentric? He says, no, that's very usual. This is quite ordinary sin. But he says, you are guilty of something really terrible. And what could that be? I have no idea. No, he says, come on. Go deeper. What is the real sin you've committed? You think, what, me? I, little me, could do something worse than murder, worse than spiritual pride? This little me? I mean, I'm a reasonably well-intentioned person. What could that be? And he looks at you in a funny way. He says, you know. You know, it's kind of a Kafkaesque situation where you're accused of a crime that's not specified, and yet the accuser says, you jolly well know what you've done. Of course, we can't mention it. Because, you know, it's like those laws that are on the books of the state of California and several other states
where people are accused of the abominable crime against nature. Nobody knows what it is. It can't be mentioned. It's too dreadful to be talked about. So this guy does the same thing, but it's in a different dimension. He's done it. Now what? Well, what did you do? See? The real crime is that you won't admit you're God. That's false modesty. So the Guru challenges, you see. He challenges you. If you raise the person, he doesn't go out and preach in the streets. Say, come on everybody, you ought to be converted. He sits down under a tree and waits. And people start coming around, and they offer him propositions. He answers back. And he challenges you in any way that he thinks is appropriate to your situation. Now, if you've got a thin shell and your mask is easily dispatched with, he simply uses what we might call an easy method. He says, listen, Shiva, come up here. Don't pretend you're this guy here. I know who you are. And the guy sort of twinkles a bit and says, well, I guess you're right. But the people aren't like that. They have very thick shells. And so he has to invent ways of cracking them. So here's how it goes.
All right, Freedomizers, we're back here with you. And let me bring in Swami. So, hey, Swami.
Namaste, everyone.
I really do love that clip. I do. It just makes me smile. We all
see, you're living that.
Yeah.
You're living that, though. So that's going to mean a lot more to you than a lot of folks.
For those that I guess don't know what that means, it's my birthday. So, yeah, I've been, a lot of this has a lot of meaning. That's what this whole thing is to realize that the spiritual path that we are all going forward in allows us to learn something that we were not necessarily aware of prior to now. And I just see it as beautiful. I really do. And, hey, Dr. Joe, you're there as well with this. I saw you come back in. I saw you drop off and come back in, but your mic is open as well. So, hey, Dr. Joe.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Just hanging out and enjoying and contemplating all the things that we've talked about so far. And, there's a million and one things I'd like to say, about our consciousness and about where we are and what's happening. And, I mean, the key element, though, the Swami was kind of touching on it. He touched on a point that I kind of want to extrapolate on. And that there's this, the duality between mind and spirit, if you will. And for myself, I use kind of a spectrum that I've experienced. When I had my first kind of death experience 7 years ago, it was a full-on, like leaving the body for 10 minutes and being pronounced dead, that whole kind of thing. When I came back, I had about 3 weeks to a month where I could go in and out at will. And it was like the ultimate playground. I mean, I could play with this. I go in and out, and formless, and I like thousands of times a day. And I got so good at it during that period that I could begin to kind of stop, like an elevator, if you will, at what I call the touch points, where we begin to interface with this reality. And or this perception of reality in this dimension. And as a result, I kind of created this spectrum. It used to be much larger, but I've whittled it down to a very small spectrum of kind of 7 interface points. And it's not the chakras. Every time I say 7, people go, oh, the chakras. Well, that's not where it's at as far as that particular spectrum is concerned. But on either end of the spectrum, Swami actually spoke to that to a degree. Because on one end of the spectrum is what I call the SDR. The S, and that stands for spiritually driven reality. And the SDR is where the end of this kind of like synaptic neuron that we call a human being, where all the receptors for the brain, all of the thinking, and then the sub-receptors, which are, you know, like your senses and what have you. But that singularity, that is that separate receiver that is taking in all the information on this, there's a moment-to-moment, constantly changing sensation that's occurring. And that constantly changing sensation and all of that vibration and all those frequencies that are being received on all those levels simultaneously, that is where our life is occurring. That's where it's happening. That's the repeatlessness moment. That is the here and now, the eternal present, whatever you want to call it in that regard. But that is where our life is occurring, is at that tip, at the tip of that sensor, of that. It's almost like a you know, I see like oh, what would you call it? Come on, Joe. A fiber optic cable, and you've got the tip of this cable and has all these sensors on it. Well, that right where all that sensing is occurring, at the tip of that cable on a moment-to-moment basis, that's where our life is occurring. And then, so that's the spiritually driven reality. On the other end of that spectrum then, in this perception of reality, we have what I call the PDR, the psychologically driven reality. And psychologically driven reality is exactly what Swami was speaking into just a moment ago, where that is where it divides the indivisible, separates the inseparable. It takes all of those sensations that are coming in as a singularity and chops them up and puts them all into their little compartments so that we can organize and attempt to bring meaning to this experience. Now, the problem we have in consciousness, we want to look at it as a quote-unquote problem, but the situation that is occurring is that, you know, so we have this thing, the SDR, where it's actually occurring, and then we have this echo of organization called the PDR, the psychologically driven reality, where we divide it and do all this kind of stuff. And the situation is that we believe that that thing that is dividing and separating the inseparables and dividing the individuals, we believe that that's who we are. And as a result, when we identify with that thing that is doing all of that, we then are separate from all that is occurring.
And other exists.
Precisely. That other even exists. Precisely. Oh, yes. You know, exactly, Swami. Exactly. That other even exists. So now, you know, so one way to kind of characterize it is there's a Buddhist approach or a koan, and that is that one can either be scissors or needle and thread. Those are the only two choices that you have in this reality. If you have free will, you can choose to be scissors or needle and thread. And if you're scissors, you're identified with that PDR, the psychologically driven reality, and you're chopping up this reality and cutting it into all these little pieces and putting it in compartments. And if you choose to be needle and thread, you sit in the SDR and you take each one of those pieces and you sew them back together to create the, you know, the beautiful tapestry of what life is. And so it's a wonderful thing saying we are love and we are these things, and to begin to identify with all of that, because it steers us kind of in a direction. But
it really steers us away from realizing that everything that's around us, because that's what happens to most, is at this point, most people that wake up and see reality or actually see things around them, they wake up and they walk outside the door and they think that everything is so overwhelming, that there's so much that they can't have a possible effect or even control over their own lives, that it becomes a serious issue. This is that whole red pill, blue pill, red pill. You know, it's woken up. Would you give the chance to be back in the matrix? Because it is seriously an overwhelming presence that most see. And that's the thing that this control grid has allowed. But the power that we all individually have, and this change that is happening, this spiritual awakening, this control awakening, realizing that the power is within ourselves, and that's where we need to go, I think has actually changed that. It's no longer, okay, but it's still a bad thing. It's the fact that as long as we keep conceiving it as a bad thing, it will continue to be a bad thing. And that's where a lot of this problem lies, because we don't have faith in ourselves. We are nothing more than entertained automatons that are programmed, and that's exactly why they have programming, that are programmed to do nothing more than exist almost as holographic images so that those that maybe are aware can choose their own life. And do you want to be accepted as being one of those holograms?
That's, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I personally, if I could say that, this is an I. There's this big movement now. There's this big movement, and it's very interesting. That's catching on even more so. And the teachings of Saint Germain and the I am presence, and now conscious languaging, and they start off with I am that I am. And just that I am that I am. That is the starting point in that languaging. And then from there, when we're using affirmations, I am love. And there's this thing, this nebulous thing then called love, as opposed to in conscious languaging, I am my love. I am my serenity. And really owning it in that regard. Yet in the same breath, for myself, I am that I'm not. We are that we aren't, and it is that it isn't. In other words, I'm surrendered to the reality for myself that I am but just a synaptic waveform that is passing through all these other waveforms, with its only function within inside all those waveforms is to attempt to harmonize the disharmonic frequencies that are what we would identify as disharmony, but to that like my and then people say, well, what about your will? Do you have will in your personal and all this other kind of stuff? And for me, it is just simply a surrender. And I wouldn't identify myself as a Christian, but they characterize it as not my will, but thy will. To surrender to the flow and to constantly be in service to that flow.
That's exactly the process and end point of yoga. By whatever words or set of words you may understand yoga, but this is the end point, the culmination of the human experience. This is not, when I say yoga, I'm not simply referring to what the spandex-laden people do at the YMCA.
Right.
That's part of it. That's, working on the body and the breath. That's great. That's where most people start. But then there are those who have more expanded experiences that are not correlated to the physical body or the physical breath. Some have to die repeatedly, and come back and talk about it from like, you know what, I wish I could teach you, but I died. I'd prefer you didn't. Or if you said, here, I'll kill you. I know what's coming. Great, here.
Yeah. Really. I mean, it's way overrated, man. It's way overrated. Just chill.
Yeah, really. Everything comes right in the end.
I'm glad you brought up that idea of yoga, because there's a distinction in language for myself that made a huge difference. I also am a Swami Bodhi Sudaya in the school of Tantra. And I don't, the moment you say Tantra, everyone the Western bastardization of it just being a sexual thing. That's just like the tip of the fingernail of really what Tantra is. But to characterize Tantra is where I even came up with my whole concept that I teach, which is called holosophy. And really we're having a holosophic, experience and conversation here. But in holosophy, it's the idea of the kind of distinction between yoga and Tantra. And we have this conversation. It started, I guess Wayne Dyer kind of put it out there, and it became popular. Am I a human having a spiritual experience or a spirit having a human experience? And we had to make a choice. And the reality is we're both, right? And so, and so in that, the characterization between yoga and Tantra, how I would characterize that is that yoga would be characterized on one level as And both of them arrive at the same goal. So that one is better than the other. But both of them are about cultivating the witness. Okay, as this listener, as we spoke about earlier, that which is perceiving, not that which then formulates ideas about what that which is perceived, but the perceiver or the receiver or the listener. So in yoga, it would be characterized as suppression with awareness. And we suppress our senses, our thoughts, our identifications, all the kinds of things, and we turn those off so that then we can identify with the witness, which then takes us to our God consciousness, which then experience the oneness. And it's very effective, and that's like 99% of everything that's out there. Now, Tantra, though, would be characterized very differently than that. Once again, you're cultivating the witness, but what it is the characterization, as opposed to suppression with awareness, it is indulgence with awareness. In other words, you indulge in your pain. You indulge in your fears. You indulge in all of these things and really feel them to the nth degree, so as to embrace all the aspects of yourself. That's where holosophy comes from. And at the same time, you have to remain witness to it all, though, so that it is happening, but you are not having it. You're simply just observing the brain, the biocomputer, the separation, the PDI, the psychologically driven reality. You're observing that whole thing as if you were observing someone outside of yourself. Precisely. And allow it to occur. Now, the thing for myself is that when I was being brought through all of my yogic practices and all of my suppression with awareness, I was actually denying my humanity. And as I was transferred 20, 30 years ago into this whole tantric practice of really indulging in my humanity, I actually was embracing all that I am. And so, it seems so critical in so many ways that all these distinctions and all the separation consciousness and all the stuff of them and all of that is rooted kind of in that denial of being that is who we are. There's not a human being that's not violent. There's not a human being that's not aggressive. There's not a human being that's not selfish. There's not a human being that's not a murderer. There's not a human being, any life form. They would say, well, there's degrees of murder. There's a human murder. But, you killed flies, you killed scorpions, you killed bugs, killing is killing. It's taking life. It's extinguishing. It's on different levels, but it's still killing. So the point is that everything that's out there, we are. And if we can accept that, and really embrace the truth of that of those words, it is then that we really truly can be whole. Truly be whole, and as we are whole in that regard, then we can truly exercise compassion. Because when we see someone else who is in that realm or in that form, we can say, wow, yeah, I identify with that inside myself, and maybe we can go this way, though. Have you ever considered that? But if you're in the denial saying, I'm not that way and you're wrong and you're bad, then we just polarize it and perpetuate it.
That's it. Oh, it's so much easier to separate. It does not allow a lot of this control forces to exist. This whole idea that this whole evil, bad, right, wrong, light, dark, when it's literally like the two sides of the same coin. It's not like they're separate. They're still together. It's this idea that, again, this linear term, like what we started before, I guess that was like a couple hours ago, but still, we are limited to our linear experience and our linear perception more than anything else, that everything has to have a beginning and an end, that everything has to have a start and everything must die. Basically, this is where we exist here and now. The problem is that existence and life and reality and the source and love and everything that makes us who we are and that ties us all together, and this beauty and wonder and creativity and imagination is not limited to these linear constraints that we have allowed, like this brain, this nothing more than a computer program. And like you were stating about experiencing something beyond this, is that once you try to put it in linear terms or process it through our our processor, our brain, then it makes it hard to speak about, because there isn't something truly tangible, a linear concept that can explain what one goes through. At least from my opinion and my point of view. Again, it is our personal experience.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just listening. You keep going, girl. You go, girl. Yeah. The thing is that the seriousness of it all. We get so serious about it. And the importance of having a position. Having a position from which that we have to defend almost, when we sit in the idea that if everything, if the law of repeatlessness is true, it's a law, therefore it's self-governing and self-perpetuating, that every moment is fresh and new. If that's true, then every moment is completely and totally unknown. And everything is fresh and new. So if every moment is unknown and every moment is fresh and new, we've got quite a problem here, because we've got this thing called the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal lobe, and its job, when we got it, a couple thousand years ago, when the prefrontal lobe began to develop, its job was to predict the future, to be a life simulator. And so it was really great when we had adversaries and we were having to save ourselves from saber-toothed tigers and get into the cave to keep warm, and we had all these kind of things like that, but we're no longer in that survival mode, yet this particular part of the brain has continued to grow and has continued to need to justify its existence. And so as we as a species, and as this prefrontal lobe has developed, it went from having actual adversaries to having what I call having to manufacture illusory adversaries in order to justify its existence. Now, the big problem with the with the prefrontal lobe is that its job is to predict the future, but if the future is completely unknown and fresh and new, it can never truly be right.
Well, and then the whole thing is that everything goes on all at once, and this idea of having to have control over where things go, knowing that nothing is completely predictable. Think about, I guess, like even a lake or a stream or something. I mean, you can pretty much say the way things should go or the path that it will follow, but if you sit there and try to change it or affect it to make it go down a certain path, then that alters the reality that we're a part of now. And so trying to go to something that helps you predict the future, or something that helps you scry or read, is something that it's not necessary. It's life is. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, we are. I am. That's a beautiful thing.
Amen.
Such a simple and short thing to say that means so much.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for myself,
anybody can toss it out of their lips.
Yeah. Well, for myself, what 2012 represents for myself is the disillusionment, or the letting go of this prefrontal lobe, and letting go of this predictive nature and this knowing nature. And it's very much, I don't know, biblical things just keep coming into my brain today as far as, I know, it's been years since I've been in that reality, but, the idea that sense of awe and that sense of wonder and that sense of not knowing and just like, oh my gosh, look at this, and just simply embracing what is. And, if there's a function for humanity, or, that's another thing. That's a whole other concept. I introduced that idea of the MOS, the Mutual Admiration Society. And I think each one of us are, MOS, we're MOSs, which I would say, mutual admiration advocates or ambassadors right here,
Well, we do. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, but and there's other ideas, you know, like in some realms you say the word Christianity and there's like a cringe, like, or Catholicism, there's like a, and there's even that now, you know, amongst like the Burning Man crowd and a community in that society and a whole bunch of people, that the moment you say spirituality, there's like a, and it goes into New Age and metaphysics and all these other kind of stuff. And so I've struggled with that because I'm real comfortable with any of the terms. You know, from any of the religions or any of the descriptions. I'm perfectly comfortable with all of them because they're all trying to describe the same thing and make little distinctions there. But so I'm adding a new distinction, and instead of spirituality or Christianity or humanity, all this other, I'm calling it humanality. That we can no more deny that we are radiant beings that are taking in energy and radiating it out. I mean, we've got all the tools and measurements that there's a huge donut around you, electromagnetic field that's coming from your heart chakra and going out. That we can measure now. It used to be only 15 feet. Now we've gotten it out to 50 feet. That I can actually measure the pulse of your vibration and what you're emanating 50 feet from you and a giant donut around you. So we can no more deny that than we could deny that we have a hand or a foot. And it's not about the woo-woo metaphysics spirituality. It's just part of being human. And so I'm stepping outside of even the spiritual realm in that regard and just stepping into this new concept of humanality. And humanality just embraces all that we are, and it ties into that holosophy. And it ties into, you know, and so there's only one function I can figure I'm on the planet. And as a separate kind of, you know, meat water sack that's animated in this dimension, and that is to uplift and nurture all life on the planet. I mean, you have plants, and these plants take the poison that we call carbon dioxide, and it transforms it into oxygen, which then allows other life forms to live. In the same way, we are transmuters. And what we're transmuting is a vibration that we would call hate, anger, or disdain, or you know, whatever has that kind of behind it, the selfishness, the self-preservation. We touched on that earlier in the conversation, but that you know, when you're identified with the mind, it's all about the self, and it's all about preserving yourself, and all about greed, and I need more, and my people need more, and la 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 la. And when we're identified in spiritually driven reality, SDR, it's all about everyone, and it's all about what is the best for everyone. And it's almost like characterized between the difference between sorcery and wizardry. Sorcery is using the energetics and the energies that you have for the good of oneself at the expense of anyone. And wizardry would be using those energetics and the things that we are, the actualities that we are, and using all of that in order for the good of everyone at the expense of no one. And so what we are witnessing currently is the use of all these manifestation skills and all of these things, whether it's through technology or money or greed and systems and all this stuff. All of that is sorcery. And it's all based in the identification with the mind and the separation and self-preservation.
And this whole idea of having to have, the problem I have with all that is this whole idea of having to have a physical representation to do something that we already do. I don't like it. I guess, again, it comes back to the terms being used. Because once you say like sorcery or even bring up the word magic, I mean, there's these whole ideas that form in a person's mind. And okay, again, we're trying to get away from the mind thing, I get that, but using it's maybe it's just me, it bothers me, I guess.
Well, in the humanality, there's not a single life form on this planet, in this dimension as we perceive it, that is not manipulating energy some way. Is not using energy in some way, transforming it, transmuting it, whether it's a tiger that's growling and using that energetic to get something away from it, or another animal that's, you know, that's scratching or just digesting or just living in peace. We are all, there's a life form on this planet that is not manipulating or using energy in some way. And so I just characterized it as such, that how do we interface and use this energy, and it's we're going to use this energy to either benefit everyone or benefit ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so sorcery, I just use that because it's, I mean, it is, we are all energy transmitters and transducers and receivers and all of that.
And all of this are natural processes that happen within our existence, within this realm or within this matrix we all co-create. But nonetheless, these are natural processes, and the only problem I have is the need to have to control them. We are a part of it. Therefore, it is us as much as we are an individual. So there's this idea that it's necessary to have to go through a ritual to have an effect on something that you already are. I guess that's...
Yeah, but I think it's a false premise to think that any one of us are going to maintain, at this point right now, maintain that perfect clear vision that is constantly in the oneness and constantly seeing that all the time. Because in our humanality and in the holosophy, we're both. We are that, and we are then the brain. And so if we're going to be having to interface with this thing called the brain, there are certain models, I think, that are more useful and helpful towards remembering the oneness than there are not. And so, I myself, I've experienced and seen quite a lot through my experiences. And at the same time, I will never say that...
Which is beautiful, right? I mean, that's what made it...
Well, yeah. But I'm not going to pretend, though. See, that's the thing. That's why I said I want to run on Mr. Death or something like that, because there's all these preconceived ideas that if you've died and you've come back, now you're supposed to be Mr. Holy and Jesus, and you touch someone and they can heal and all this other kind of stuff. And it's just like, as long as you're in a body, man, you got issues. And and you're having a human experience, and it's about working out all of it.
Trip over the sidewalk too.
Right, precisely. Yeah, I put on one shoe one at a time. Just like everybody else. I put my leg, shoot my pants on one leg at a time. I mean, and so it all comes down to what was happening in the chat room here. And I think somebody said to Swami, and he responded, that there's only the moment. And whatever we can use to keep us in that moment and to step out of, fear. And fear for me is just, once again, identifying with the PDR. And it's letting the prefrontal lobe do its thing. And so we create these fantasized events that appear as real, F-E-A-R, these fantasized events that appear as real. And the moment we go anywhere but here and now, we're missing what's happening. It's like what John Lennon says, life's what happens while you're making other plans. And so realistically, it's like, if and have either one of you seen the movie I Am yet?
No.
Okay, there's a new documentary out there called I Am. And I think it was filmed some time ago, but now it's just recently got distribution. I really recommend anyone
everything about life, basically.
Well, it's a movie about a fellow who went through a traumatic experience and was really kind of not suicidal, but inviting death because of all the pain that he was in as a result of this neurological disorder. He was just constantly in pain, and medicine couldn't deal with it. And no matter what they threw at him, he was just in severe, agonizing pain for like 9 months. And he didn't want to kill himself, but he was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. And, it's just too much. It was just overwhelming. Anyway, so he went through a whole process, and then he started, and then briefly touch about that process. But his idea was, he asked the question, well, what would I say if I had the last thing to say to humanity? What would it be? And he had some questions, like, why are we here, and really what's going on, and all this other kind of stuff. And so he went around and interviewed people about this, various, consciousness and quantum physicists and stuff like that. It's a very short film, about an hour and 15 minutes. But one of the points in the film that was extraordinary was sociologists and biologists were working together and studying animal behavior. And, that we have accepted in the Darwinian kind of form that there's this hierarchical level of reality within the species, that the strong survive and the dead, and the weak, perish. And there's a whole aspect of Darwin's work that was completely ignored, and that the key element within his work was talking about love and the oneness and unanimity. I can't say the word. Unanimity. Yeah. And But as they studied different, like they were studying these caribou, I think. It was a deer tribe. And they thought that, the buck with all the horns, there were several of them, they were the ones that were in control and that they were the ones leading, the herd. And so as they studied them, they noticed that the bucks were actually sitting outside and kind of looking. And there's this kind of real interesting balance because they're all out on the prairie and they have so many miles to go to get to water. And it's getting hot out, yet they need to graze so that they have enough energy. And if they leave too soon, they wouldn't have eaten enough, and then they won't be able to make it to the water. And if they leave, and they'll get too hot. And if they leave too late, the other animals that would be their predators would be near the water. So there's a fine thing. And so they're trying to figure out how do they decide when to go. And what they observed is it was not the buck that finally said, okay, time to go. What happened was that they're all grazing, and there's like 1,000 of them out there, and all of a sudden one would look up towards the direction, and there were 3 directions they could go for water. One would look up in that direction, and then another one would look up in that direction, and over a period of time, all of a sudden, like when the 501st deer would look up and face that direction, then they all went at the same time. And the bucks actually turned out to just be the guardians. They weren't the leaders at all. They were just kind of the guardians protecting them from any predators that might be coming in. And so then they studied stylings, and they studied how they travel in time. And there's kind of thousands of this group decisions of where they're going to go. And you see the fish, the schools of fish that are swimming, and all of a sudden you're turning left, all of a sudden they're going up and down. And that is how life occurs. And so in that same way, as each one of us sits in the place and no longer identifies with that thinking mind. In other words, it's not about going out there and trying to lead the people into the new thing. It's about sitting and identifying with what Swami's talking about, and even what oh God, why did my brain just go dead? Yeah, Raven was talking about that. Not you, Nikki, but what Raven was talking about that path going within. And that deep listening, so that when we get to that 100th monkey, if you will, that critical mass, and I actually believe it's already occurred. I really believe that the wave of human consciousness, that we've crested over that, and that we're all heading in this one direction. But because we got this mind that's kind of grab onto these other definitions of how it should be, as opposed to just being with how it is, and letting go and surrendering to the flow of really being together and working together.
Well, hey, guys. Hey,
you gotta go?
Joe? Well, yeah, we're just out of time, so you want to make a last comment? I know.
Well, yeah, love yourself. Relax into the fact that you're beautiful just as you are. If there's one affirmation that I teach, it's I'm so happy and grateful now that I'm at peace as I am. Nothing bad, nothing needs to change, and I leave you with that each of us are at peace as we are, and just embrace each other, love each other, and we're on our way already.
That was quite a nice statement. So thank you so much, Dr. Joe, and I'll be emailing you, if not today, tomorrow. So hopefully we'll speak soon.
Sounds great.
All right, thanks. And Swami, dear Swami, namaste as always. And any last comments from you? Oh, wait.
Great love and...
No, hold on, it didn't work. Your mic was muted. Sorry, I apologize. I hit the wrong one.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
I leave you all with great love and great respect.
Thank you. Simple and beautiful as always. Namaste to everyone. I'm going to play a quick song. Beautiful. It's a beautiful show. It's like, seriously, I've had a great time. Let's see, when will I be on next? Monday, actually, 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central. That's 1:30 Pacific. And then following this show, we've got John Moretti from the Liberty Underground, the Moretti Report coming up. So be sure to tune in for that. And Swami, I look forward to speaking to you again as always. And everybody, just realize this is a beautiful day, and we do have the ability to rise above dehumanization. So have fun, enjoy your weekend and your Friday, and see you Monday. Bye.
This is a control grid to track and trace and make it a second-class citizen. They're going to decide what sites you visit, and they're only going to allow a couple thousand sites. 99% of the web will be off-limits.
What you care, you're living for see. Why you think your life's so busy? On the side, feeling freedom of speech. Politicians seem out of reach. You can find them nude on the beach. Lots of rights we had, those were breached. As the nosy, why not impeach? Tides flowing with greed. All the sea is green in between. Men stealing sheep with TV. Slowly up, you still believe?